you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. This is a case that we'll be looking at. It was requested many times over, a relatively recent case, the Delphi murders. The murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. And this occurred near Monon High Bridge, Deer Creek Township in Carroll County, Indiana, in the U.S. Now, I usually don't go over cases that are incredibly recent, mostly because hopefully it'll be solved. Hopefully police have a lot of information that they might not have released, and they solve the case, and there is closure and justice is served. If it's extremely mysterious and it looks like it's going to be a cold case, I mean, there's just so much evidence in this case. I mean, there's cell phone footage of a suspect. There's recordings that the girls made. The other thing is this is more of a personal thing, but for me, in general, as someone who is not a close friend or family member, emotionally, it's a little bit easier to kind of delve into cases that are older. I don't know if it's just me or in general. I mean, even talking about something as grisly as Jack the Ripper, if you haven't checked out the Mindshock Jack the Ripper podcast series, check that out. It's the most comprehensive and in-depth podcast on Jack the Ripper. It's just, other than for friends and family, it seems like it's easier to discuss some of these cases, especially with younger victims. In this case, these are 8th graders, so it is quite emotional to discuss their murders. And the more recent it is, the more difficult it is, at least for me. But this case was requested, and in the hopes of bringing even more awareness to it and discussing it from different angles, hopefully the perpetrator will be found, if he hasn't been found already, and more to discuss on that side of it. As always, if you like the podcast, you want to support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, suggestions, rebuttals, leave them in the comment section. You could also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case and topic requests. All right, so as always, this will be a comprehensive look at this very, very traumatizing case just to even look at. It's not easy on the stomach. So it happened February 13th, 2017. So a little over 3 years ago now. The time estimated is between 1:45 and 5:30 p.m. Once again, this took place in Carroll County, Indiana. All right, so just let's go over the general overview from the wiki, and then we will dive deep and look at all available evidence and go down every single theory and avenue to see what happened here and where the case stands at this point. And also, just of course, if they actually were able to photograph their ultimate murderer, why hasn't he been found yet? I mean, in an age where everybody has cell phones and there's a lot of surveillance, and it just seems very strange that this case is still unsolved. It seems strange, and I'll go over variables as to why it's unsolved. There's a couple things that jumped out at me when reviewing the case, and I'll go over them. But yeah, quick overview. February 14th, 2017, the bodies of Abigail Williams and Liberty German were discovered near the Monon High Bridge Trail, which is part of the Delphi Historic Trails in Delphi, Indiana, U.S., after the young girls had disappeared from the same trail the previous day. The murders have received significant media coverage because a photo and audio recording of an individual believed to be the girl's killer was found on German's smartphone. Despite these recordings of the suspect that have been circulated and more than 26,000 tips that police have received, no arrest in the case has been made. The murders. At 1:35 p.m. on February 13th, 2017, 13-year-old Abigail J. Abby Williams and 14-year-old Liberty Rose Lynn Libby German were dropped off by German's older sister, Kelsey German, at a trailhead on County Road 300 North, west of the Hoosier Heartland Highway. The girls were hiking on the Monon High Bridge over Deer Creek among woodland in remote Deer Creek Township when they were last seen. They were reported missing at 5:30 p.m. when they failed to meet family at the end of the trail. Authorities who quickly searched the area did not initially suspect foul play in the disappearance. However, this changed when the bodies of the girls were found around noon the next day, about a half a mile east of the abandoned Monon High Bridge. The bodies were about 50 feet from the north bank of Deer Creek. You know, the other thing, just reading that, I mean, is it really that bad to err on the side of caution, especially in this day and age? So many missing persons cases. There's just it's daunting, but why not suspect foul play from the outset? I mean, why not? Or on that extra bit of caution. I don't know. Anyway, let's continue here. And not just in that case, in any case, does it really, it's, you know, if police don't want to spend the time or resources immediately, I mean, obviously the closer to the disappearance, the more critical it is that action be taken. Because, and for the people that only care about money, how cheap are all these searches? So in cases where no bodies are found, I mean, you have repeated searches, you might even call in helicopters. Why not just have that response right away instead of later? And I guess the argument is, whatever, 90% of people that get lost might not be found immediately. So if you had that kind of response for each of these cases, but for minors at least, I don't know. It seems like erring on the side of caution would be better, but... Okay, the investigation. Police have not publicly stated nor released details of how the girls were murdered. As early as February 15th, 2017, Indiana State Police began circulating a still image of an individual reportedly seen on the Monon High Bridge trail near where the two friends were slain. The grainy photograph appears to capture a Caucasian male, hands in pockets, walking on the rail bridge, headed down toward the girls. A few days later, the person in the photograph was named the prime suspect in the double homicide. On February 22nd, law enforcement released an audio recording where the voice of the assailant, though in some degree muffled, is heard to say, "down the hill." It was at this news conference that officials credited the source of the audio and imagery to German's smartphone and further regarded her as a hero for having had the uncanny foresight and fortitude to record the exchange in secret. Police indicated that additional evidence from the phone had been secured, but that they did not release it so as to not compromise any future trial. By this time, the reward offered in the case was set at $41,000. I mean, some of these rewards are so low. Are there any billionaires out there that care about bringing justice and closure to some of these families out there? I mean, really? On July 17th, officers distributed a composite sketch of someone who, at that time in the investigation, was sought as a person of prime interest in the murders. It had apparently been drawn by police from eyewitnesses to a certain hiker of the Delphi Historic Trails on the day that the girls vanished. On April 19th, 2019, Indiana State Police announced a new direction in the case. On behalf of State Police and the Multi-Agency Task Force, Superintendent Doug Carter released more materials a few days later in a press conference held on April 22nd. The new materials included a short video recording in which the blue-jeaned and jacketed suspect is seen walking along the rail bridge for a little over a second. Superintendent Carter states that because of the deteriorated condition of the bridge, the suspect is not walking naturally due to the spacing between the ties. Now, that's a very interesting point because just from looking at it, it almost looks like the individual captured, like there's something wrong with him because of the posture and the walk. But it's explained here that the spacing between the ties is causing that because it almost makes him seem less threatening and awkward. And I'll be going into that more in a bit. An updated sketch of the suspect was also unveiled, as well as an extended version of the audio recording in which a slight rise in the suspect's voice can be detected as he utters the word guys before the phrase down the hill. It was further explained that the previously released sketch showing an older man with goatee and cap is now considered secondary. By contrast, the clean-shaven individual of the newly revised composite is the primary sketch of the prime suspect. Police say this person may range from age 18 to 40, but caution that his youthful appearance could make him look younger than his true age. Yeah, I don't know if it's just the way he's walking due to the spacing again on that bridge. He definitely does not look 18. I would say, yeah, late 30s, early 40s. I don't know. From the sketch, he looks a little bit younger. He could be mid-20s to mid-30s. But yeah, it's just so weird because just from the sketch, it just seems, and hands in pockets too, almost. Is he trying to make himself seem non-threatening? But there's just something about the video that makes it seem like this guy is just not the stereotypical serial killer. And also, I'll be going more into these theories later too. Is it typical to try to kill two people at once? Because if one, and again, the area, supposedly, if there's only one way out from the area, I don't know. It's just the whole thing's a bit bizarre. Okay. Also, on April 22nd, law enforcement reached out to the public, urging all to look at the sketch, listen to the audio, watch how this coward walks on the high bridge, and send your tip to this email. Investigate. The email is Abby and Libby tip at cacoshrf.com. Investigators revealed that they have reason to believe that the suspect might well be hiding in plain sight, and that the person is almost certainly familiar with the area of Delphi, whether it be from living or working there, or for another reason. An additional plea was made for help in identifying the driver of a vehicle left abandoned off the Hoosier Heartland Highway in Delphi at the former Child Services office between noon and 5 p.m. on the day of the murders. And also from these sketches, it looks like there could have been two individuals in that area in that time frame. One with an older man with a goatee, and then the younger individual. Okay. Persons of interest: Paul Etter. On July 23rd, 2019, after receiving a tip, authorities announced that Paul Etter was being considered a person of interest in the murders. Etter was wanted for the kidnapping and rape of a 26-year-old woman on June 22nd in Tippecanoe County. 5 days later, Etter was surrounded by police, and after a 5-hour standoff, he committed suicide. So this is going to lead into one of my theories too, that if the person in the video is the murderer, were they able to definitively verify that it was not Paul Etter? Because if this individual is already dead, or it's already one of their known suspects, then are they looking for other people? And how do they know with certainty that these current persons of interest can't be ruled out or definitively ruled in? Because if it's definitely one of these guys, are they still looking for other people? Again, a lot of curiosities that need to be addressed. Daniel J. Nations, a registered sex offender from Indiana, was arrested in Woodland Park, Colorado in September 2017 and charged with threatening strangers on a monument trail with a hatchet. The expired Indiana plates on the car Nations was driving was noticed by police, who subsequently discovered an outstanding warrant under his name. Fanning public speculation still further, it was reported that a bicyclist had been fatally shot on the same trail at around the time that Nations was purportedly terrifying passerbys. An El Paso County Sheriff's spokesman told reporters that however many similarities there were between the cases, he was not at liberty to disclose them, since Indiana investigators did not want any more information released. On January 5th, 2018, Nations was sentenced to 3 years of probation for threatening members of the public in Colorado. However, he was not released since he had an active warrant on him back in Indiana. On January 24th, Nations was finally transferred to Indiana officials' custody on an unrelated charge, failure to register as a sex offender. In early February 2018, authorities said that Nations was no longer considered an active person of interest in the Delphi murders. Thomas Bruce. Thomas Bruce, who formerly worked as a pastor, is charged with fatally shooting one woman and sexually assaulting two others after having ordered them at gunpoint into the back room of a suburban St. Louis shop for religious supplies. Committed in broad daylight on November 19th, 2018, these crimes put Bruce in the spotlight of the press. Some noted his being of similar stature, 5'7" to 5'9", to the then current suspect description of the Delphi slangs. Also, his wearing a flat cap and a navy blue jacket during this attack, not unlike the suspect in the Delphi case. Indiana State Police did look into his possible connection in November. On December 4th, Bruce was charged with no fewer than 17 felony counts related to the St. Louis case and could receive the death penalty. The thing that, okay, so if he has a similar cap and jacket, okay, that's nice, but what jumps out at me is that he's assaulting more than one person at the same time in broad daylight. I mean, is there an MO here? And if he's brazen enough to do that with adult women, so this is the Catholic Supply shooting. This happened November 19th, 2018. This was at a strip mall. It says, in St. Louis County, Missouri, sexually assaulted two women, shot another in the head when she refused to undress at his command before leaving the store. He's doing this in the middle of the day, and he's not afraid to, if this guy's not afraid to try to attack, assault more than one adult, why would he for a minor? And apparently he also did home invasions. Wow, that's really messed up. He was also charged with invading the home of a 77-year-old woman near Hillsborough on September 27th, 2018, kidnapping, sexually abusing, assaulting, and robbing her. And he does face the death penalty. I couldn't find a photo of him wearing a cap to see the effect on his face, but people have done voice analyses. This is from the YouTube channel of Michael Catt, K-A-T-T.
I am a citizen. You work for me. Okay. All right? Do you understand that? I don't work for you. Yes, you do. I pay your taxes, and you do not work for me. Step back. Well, then you step back. All right, you're going to stand right there, and I'm going to stand right here. Where do you want to stand? Right here. There.
Now let's compare his voice to that of the Delphi suspect to see if we see any similarities between the two.
Yes, you do. I pay your taxes. Well, then you step back. I am a citizen. You work for me.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because he's kind of yelling at the police officer there, and he's not really yelling when he's saying down the hill. Sounds relatively calm. Obviously, the guy would have to be unhinged if he was planning to kill them and is just ordering them around in such a nonchalant fashion. Very, very disturbing. But just looking at the photographs, I don't know. It's tough. It looks like, it's also hard to tell with the clothes are a little bit baggy, so it's hard to tell exactly how big the guy is. But moving on to another person of interest, Charles Eldridge. Charles Eldridge was arrested on January 8, 2019 in Union City, Indiana on charges of child molestation and child solicitation. Police in Randolph County alerted the FBI to a potential link between Eldridge and the Delphi murders on account of his strong resemblance to the suspect's sketch. I'll bet this was before the updated composite had come out. Also hard to tell definitively. This guy does look a little bit older, though. All right. So let's get a little bit more specific. So this is from the IndieChannel.com. 3 years later, everything we know about the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams in Delphi. This is by Katie Cox, February 12th, 2020, updated February 14th, 2020. 3 years ago, two young girls went for a walk. What happened on that unusually warm February day remains a mystery to this day to everyone but Liberty German, Abigail Williams, and the man who murdered them. February 13th, 2017, Libby and Abby were dropped off at the trail near Delphi's scenic Monon High Bridge, an abandoned railroad bridge over Deer Creek. Hours later, when they failed to meet their ride home at that same location, it would kick off a series of events that would forever change the tiny town of Delphi, Indiana. Despite having a video, audio, and 2 sketches from potential witnesses in the area, investigators have yet to find the man responsible for their murders. We thought we were going to get clues that we needed and be done with this in 4 or 5 days, ISP Detective Jerry Holman told RTV6 in 2019. We realized that this is a totally different type of investigation, but a killer is still out there. Indiana State Police Sergeant Kim Riley says investigators have interviewed over 1,000 people, including possible witnesses, suspects, and anyone who may have information about suspicious activity on the day the girls went missing. To this day, he says between 6 to 8 people work on Libby and Abby's case each day throughout the week. But despite all of the evidence released to the public, investigators have always been open about the fact that they are holding some of it close to their vests with the goal of having information that only the killer would know when they finally arrest him. That day, it was an unseasonably warm day and an unexpected day off from school when friends Liberty German and Abigail Williams decided to visit the trails near the Monon High Bridge and take some photographs. A family member dropped the girls off that afternoon with a plan to pick them up a few hours later. When that pickup time arrived, the girls were nowhere to be found. Calls to Libby's cell phone went unanswered and eventually straight to voicemail. First, the family began to search. When they were still missing later that afternoon, family members contacted the sheriff's department for help. Sheriff Leesenby told RTV6 that evening that they had no reason to believe the girls were in danger. At the time, crews thought that the girls had simply gotten lost on the trails and were unable to find their way back. Throughout the evening, dozens of volunteers joined the search for the girls. The only real clue of their location was a photo Libby had snapped of Abby walking along the bridge and posted to her social media. As the sun went down and the temperature dropped, the search continued through midnight when it was officially suspended, although some family and friends did continue to search into the overnight hours. That next morning would bring a discovery that none of them were prepared for. Tragedy near Deer Creek. The search for Libby and Abby resumed on Valentine's Day morning, February 14th, 2017. Crews widened the scope of their search as soon as the sun came up, wandering further from the abandoned railroad tracks and into wooded areas below the bridge and along Deer Creek. The official search had barely resumed when one of the search teams made a gruesome discovery. The bodies of Libby and Abby were found on the back end of a private piece of property less than a mile from where they were dropped off the day before. No details surrounding how the girls were found or their cause of death have ever been released. I can't say there's not a threat to the community, Indiana State Police Sergeant Kim Riley told RTV6 at the time. We have not caught the person yet. Is the person still in the community? We don't know. So, real quick, let's just go over the property where they were found. This is also from the IndieChannel.com. Also by Katie Cox, February 17th, 2017. After over 48 hours of searching the property and area around where the bodies of 2 Delphi girls were found, police and FBI cleared the scene on Thursday. The bodies of Liberty German, 14, and Abigail Williams, 13, were found on the back end of a private piece of property about a half mile from where they were dropped off to go hiking on Monday. Ron Logan has owned that piece of land for 53 years and said that the discovery of the girls' bodies on his property is something he still hasn't been able to come to terms with. To have something like this in your own house, in your own home, I just can't get my mind around it yet. It's really difficult, said Logan. I can't comprehend it. Like most in the community, Logan never expected a tragedy like that would hit so close to him or literally in his backyard. When they said the 2 girls were missing, I never thought the worst, said Logan. I just figured, well, they got into a car and got with someone else like teenagers do. Logan said that with the steep embankments and rough terrain on the back end of his property, it would be difficult to even make it to the location, let alone carry 2 bodies down and drop them off. For them to get from there to all the way here with that rough territory they had to walk, you couldn't carry them in a million years or drag them or drop them off, said Logan. they had to walk. Indiana State Police, along with local authorities, continue to follow up on the hundreds of tips they received in the case. A search warrant was served at a home Thursday evening based on one of those tips, but police say no arrests were made. Okay, so the takeaway there is that this is very, very steep and rough terrain. All right, the suspect. In the 2 years since Libby and Abby were murdered, the evidence released to the public has remained minimal. The key evidence in the case has been video taken by Libby, likely in the moments before her death. Although investigators have never given the exact context to the images or audio taken from the video, they have said they were taken during, quote, suspected criminal activity, end quote. In the days following the girls' murders, Libby was heralded a hero by state police for having the presence of mind to begin recording at the time she did. It's still kind of weird, though. This guy just walks up to them and say, guys, down the hill. And then what? Does he have a gun? Does he have a knife? He's not brandishing it in that video. And in the area that they were at that moment, if there's only one way down, then they have to pass him. What choice did they have? And what happened after that? Did he grab both of them? Did he kill them right then? Because according to the property owner, he wouldn't have been able to carry or drag both bodies. Then again, if he wasn't acting alone, that's another issue. There's another sketch of another guy, the older guy with the goatee. Was this two guys? Either way, this is an unusual case because usually, especially in broad daylight, someone wouldn't necessarily want to risk trying to kill or assault two people at the same time, even if they were younger, just because one of them could run away, identify them, etc. I believe the MO of most of these criminals is that they would want a single target, easier to control. Also, I mean, is this guy a loony? Is he calculated? Because if one of them runs, if he has a gun, he's going to shoot. Apparently, if this is a really nice warm day out, there would presumably be other people there. Even if it's not a ton of people, would he risk it? It's just the whole situation's bizarre. Okay. Investigators have released two grainy images from that video that shows a man we're to believe was behind the girls on that bridge. A short clip of that man walking, an audio recording of a man, presumably the same one, saying, guys, down the hill. And two sketches from possible witnesses in the area the day the girls were murdered. And I just can't go over how calm he was when he says, guys, down the hill.
Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill.
Is this it's really bizarre. I mean, and going through all the different possible theories, is this guy not the murderer? Did he want to rob them? Did he want to scare them? Is this guy screwing around? Is he just mental? He doesn't understand what he's doing. Then he leaves and somebody else kills him? It's just, I don't know. Another key piece of the puzzle that investigators have released is that they believe the man who murdered Libby and Abby was either from Delphi or was familiar with Delphi, either because he works there or has other connections. I've walked across the high bridge myself. It's 65 to 70 feet off the river deck. It hasn't had a train on it since 1929, Carter said during a press conference April 22nd, 2019. The ties are starting to rot. It sways back and forth, and it's not something you can just jump on and walk straight across if you've never done it before. I decided I was going to take the riverbank going back. I didn't. That wasn't the first time he's been on that high bridge. My opinion, again, that's my opinion. I experienced it and I kept a piece of that high bridge and I carry it with me until we find out who this is. The two grainy photos. Police released the images they say were taken straight from Libby's cell phone February 15, 2017, the day after the girls' bodies were found. Both images shown below depict the same white man wearing blue jeans, a blue coat, jacket, and a hoodie. Days after Libby and Abby were found, police officially named that man a person of interest in their murders. The context surrounding the images, which were stills from a moving video, has never been given. The two audio clips. A brief audio clip, which police have always said was just a small clip of what they have from Libby's phone, was released on February 22nd, 2017. The audio of a man's voice saying, down the hill, was seconds long and was released free of video. Police have only said that the video it came from captured the man telling the girls to go down the hill during possible criminal activity. They have never elaborated further on that description. More than 2 years later, April 22nd, 2019, Indiana State Police released a new piece of audio that is a slightly extended version of the initial clip and includes the words "guys" followed by "down the hill." Although the audio may appear to be a different voice, Indiana State Police were clear when they released it that the extended clip was all the same person. Please keep in mind that the person talking is one person and is the person on the bridge with the girls, Carter said. This is not two people speaking. Please listen to it very, very carefully.
Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill.
If this is their killer, I mean, this guy's a cool customer. If he's plan, or maybe if he didn't plan to murder them. Again, we have no idea what happened or what this guy was thinking or what he was planning, and if those plans changed at any point. But he's saying that quite calmly. It's very unsettling at how calmly he's saying that if he's planned to kill them. The video clip at that same April 22nd press conference, Indiana State Police also released never-before-seen video of Bridge Guy that was taken by Libby on the day that she died. The video shows the suspect walking along the bridge behind Libby and Abby. When you see the video, watch the person's mannerisms as they walk. Carter said when they released it, "Do you recognize the mannerisms as being someone that you might know?" Carter also said that because they know where the man was walking on the bridge, his walk is not natural because of the spacing between the ties and the deterioration in that area of the bridge. Even the guy's walk is it seems a bit calm, especially if he's already planned what he's doing. All right, the two sketches. 5 months into the investigation, Indiana State Police released their first sketch and description of a suspect. That first composite sketch was created after police said they received information from witnesses who were in the area at the time Libby and Abby went missing. At the time, the suspect was described as a white man between 5'6" and 5'10", weighing 180 to 220, with reddish brown hair and an unknown eye color. In that first sketch shown below, detectives say the man's hat was changed to make his facial features more recognizable. A second sketch was released at the press conference held on April 22nd, 2019. That sketch, which appears to be of an entirely different person, is now believed to be the main person of interest in the murders of Libby and Abby. Along with the new sketch, police also updated the description of the suspect to be a man between 18 and 40 who could appear much younger than he actually is. When we decided that, through the information we received, that we were going to release the second sketch, I don't believe the individual knew we were going to do that. So it was really, really important. I think he was probably there and or watching simply because he thought we were on the wrong path, Carter said when the second sketch was released. The sketches were composed from witness accounts of two separate individuals who were in the area on the day of the murders. Indiana State Police later revealed that the second sketch, released more than 2 years after the girls were killed, was actually the first sketch they had drawn up. They also say they now believe the second sketch is a more accurate depiction of the suspect, although the actual suspect may likely be a mix between both sketches. The sketch isn't a photograph. A sketch is a sketch, and that's really important for everybody to understand, Carter said. I believe that the individual, when we catch him, it will be a combination of those two. Now, I'm going to have to say this again because I really can't believe, did they scour through all traffic cams, all footage? I mean, there's people who have dash cams in their car just for insurance purposes, especially, 2017. I know a few people who've gotten into car accidents, and then for insurance purposes, they now have a video camera always recording. So they have it on their dash or wherever in the vehicle. So there's no other footage of this guy wearing these clothes. I mean, not even a possibility. Or if there is, maybe they do have it. But it's just, for the whole state, you could look at a day, either a day prior, day after, obviously that day. You could possibly get, because where did this guy come from? Did he walk from town? And if he did, are there any traffic cams in town? Anywhere, any security footage, anywhere. I don't know. It just seems like it should be, it's just so strange. Like you have actual video and stills of this suspect, regardless of whether he's the murderer or not. It seems like they should have been able to track him down. especially if it was a local. But even if not, if it was a trucker, because supposedly there are people that have chimed in on forums. Apparently, truckers know about that area, and it's a popular hiking area. If they're doing long trips, they might take a walk in that area. And so if it was a trucker, I'll be going more into those theories as well later. Okay, let's finish this article. Unknown vehicle. During the press conference in April 2019, Indiana State Police also requested the public's help to identify the driver of a vehicle that was parked near the Monon High Bridge on the day Libby and Abby went missing. Carter says a vehicle was parked at the old CPS DCS welfare building in Delphi on the east side of County Road 300 North next to the Hoosier Heartland Highway between noon and 5 p.m. The exact hours in question. February 14th, 2017. No details about the vehicle were released, including make and model, color, or license plate. We believe you are hiding in plain sight, Carter said, for more than 2 years. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you, and you want to know what we know, that one day you will. So far, no additional information has been released, and Indiana State Police have still not identified the vehicle or a possible person who may have been driving it. See, this is hard. This is hard to believe. They can't identify a vehicle? Do they, again, traffic cams? Are there no traffic cams in existence that can track that vehicle? This seems weird. This is 2017, not like 1970. It's bizarre. This is bizarre to me. Okay. Quelling internet rumors, Libby and Abby's deaths quickly became an unsolved mystery that was thrust into the national spotlight. While police continue their search for the Delphi killer, people across the country have been coming up with their own theories about who is responsible. Investigators say speculations, rumors, and comparisons can actually do more to hinder the investigation than to help it. In the past 3 years, only one person of interest has ever been named. But during the one-year press conference marking the Delphi murders, state police said Daniel Nations was, quote, not someone we care a whole lot about at this moment in time, end quote. Since then, no other potential suspects have been named by investigators. The tips keep coming. Although it has been 3 long years since that warm February day, Indiana State Police say they still receive new tips about Abby and Libby's murders almost daily. Every one of those tips and potential leads that are called in and emailed to the Delphi tip lines, more than 40,000 so far, is vetted by investigators. Every tip received is entered into an FBI system called Pyramid. That system stores information like names, descriptions, and motives so it can be cross-referenced with other tips locally and across the country to find any possible connections. The process is always working, comparing tips received about the Delphi murders with hundreds of other cases and tips. Investigators say they have worked a number of tips and leads that have come directly from the system or the tip line, although they say both have been able to connect the dots they had no idea existed. However, the case is still unsolved. All right, so the current reward is $250,000. Okay, that's a little bit better. But more billionaires should really care about this, because if you took like 20 billionaires, they each of them could throw in 50 grand easy, right? I mean, I don't know. It's rough. It's rough. So I'm going to go over one more article here, also from the IndieChannel.com, also Katie Cox. This was April 23rd, 2019. People living in Delphi say nothing has been the same since that warm February day just 2 years ago when Liberty German and Abigail Williams were found dead. New evidence released by Indiana State Police has renewed their hope that a suspect will be found, but it has also brought back some of the anxiety and fear that a killer could be living among them. Delphi has changed. Instead of greeting your neighbor with a handshake and a smile at the grocery store, now you look at everybody with suspicion, said Rebecca Baxter. You know what's weird, though? I mean, how many people fit the description of that bridge guy, though? I'm sure, the very elderly, people with the completely different body types. I mean, unless an unusual amount of people just look like that guy and have that body type, then maybe, okay. The new evidence includes an extended audio clip, an actual video of the suspect walking along the bridge, and a new sketch that completely changes the look of the man investigators initially called their suspect in the girls' murders. After more than 2 years, community members like Baxter say they're frustrated that they waited this long to release new information. It's been 2.5 years. Why did they sit on this, Baxter said. It's been a witch hunt around here. We all want justice. But state police have always been open about the fact that they were holding some information close to their vests. The goal, they've said in the past, was to hold information that only the killer would know. See, how does that explain not releasing that second sketch? Because they said the second sketch was the more accurate original sketch that they had. But they didn't release it. They released a less accurate sketch on purpose? I mean, that's weird. Unless they were watching people at the time and they didn't want someone to be alerted. I guess that was it. I don't know. Okay. Exactly what changed after 2 years that made them decide to release new evidence and a new sketch is still unknown. To see the sketch we've been seeing and to see this now, it's like completely different, said Angel Harner. Police say their suspect is between 18 and 40, but could appear much younger than he actually is. Another new tidbit that investigators shared during Monday's press conference. They now say they believe the man is from Delphi, is familiar with Delphi, or works in the city. Whether this was a common thought or a new one entirely is unclear, but investigators had not said anything to that effect with such certainty in the past. As a Delphi citizen, I've always felt this way, said Baxter. I always thought he was from Delphi, said Deanna Parison. I hope we get closure soon. It's weird, though. So it seems like locals always felt that it was a local. I wonder why, though, because, again, supposedly a lot of truckers go through there. And then, of course, the other thing is, obviously, they didn't detail the exact recovery of the phones and all that. So this guy didn't take their phone. So if you didn't notice she was recording him, that's fine. But, I mean, it's still kind of weird. And is there more to the recording? That's another thing, because police, they gave no context. So how could she have stopped recording? What are the options? The memory filled up, maybe, or maybe not. And there's more to the recording, and they know more. How much was recorded, and if she has the phone, it's just strange. How much was recorded? She's recording video and audio. What happened after they walked down? Why? It seems like she wouldn't stop recording, right? Because something felt off. She decided to start recording. Or even if nothing felt off, I mean, kids record random people for random things. They could have thought that guy looked funny or whatever. Maybe it wasn't necessarily a threatening vibe. I mean, who knows? It's either way. Would she randomly, especially if he starts ordering them around guys down the hill, like that's kind of weird. I don't think she'd stop recording at that time. It seems strange. So if there's much more to the recording, does she put it in her pocket? What happens exactly? And so I guess this guy, if he killed them, he didn't notice the phone to take the phone. There's it seems a little bit strange. So Gray Hughes Investigates YouTube channel actually has a great video on the exact location of where the bridge guy is walking at the time of the video. You can check it out on his YouTube channel, Gray Hughes Investigates, Delphi Murders Suspect Location. And what's interesting here is trying to track the exact timeline of what exactly happened. Because the girls start on the bridge, they take the photos, they make their way across the bridge, and then the man shows up. So they would be at approximately opposite ends of the bridge at the time that he's caught on camera. So if he walks up to them and that's when he says, guys down the hill, it's a bit strange. And here's what some more astute online researchers and theorists are saying is, they're found on the opposite bank of the creek. So that would mean they would have had to have crossed the creek to end up there. But in the video, the water level is pretty high. It's February in Indiana, so the water would probably be relatively cold. Even if that day was warm, it takes quite a few weeks for water to get warm. So this is February. So would they have crossed the creek? Because, maybe, but would the suspect make them cross? I mean, it's a bit strange, unless they ran away. Yeah, it's just obviously very disturbing to try to think of the details of how all this went down, but it seems like, you would think the police and the FBI, they would have exact motions and order of motions based on available information that they have, where the bodies were found, if there were any prints near the body, either boot prints, whatever, that could suggest what path was taken, whether they did go through the creek or not, and all of these things. There were rumors on Facebook pages that at least one of the girls tried to fight the guy off and was not found directly next to her friend. So it was not revealed, obviously, cause of death. It is unknown whether they were shot or not. Also, if there's hunting nearby, are gunshots not that unusual? I don't know. But if these rumors are true, so were they in the water at one point if they were trying to run away? So, because in some of the news footage, there are people in suits in the middle of the water. So either they could have just been searching for the water or whatnot. We really don't know. There's too much, too much unknown information. This whole thing seems kind of strange, though, because apparently that's not the most remote area in the world. It's a semi-popular area. I think people that hiked it said there was usually at least one or two other people within any given span of time. So how long does it take to commit this crime? Especially if they were running away. It's bizarre, very, very bizarre. Other people theorize that he drowned the girls and he had a change of clothing available, and afterwards he just changed clothes and walked away or drove away or whatever. And they also theorize what I just did, that the entire thing was recorded on video and the police have it. And that makes it even more disturbing on a whole nother level. I mean, not just because the girls were so young, but it's so disturbing. I mean, it's just unimaginable to put yourself in their shoes, and this random guy. It's a very bizarre case. And again, just going back to the fact that we have this video of the guy, why is he not found yet? Other online theorists are saying that the police are making a huge mistake assuming that the guy is a local. So, and again, with other evidence online pointing to the fact that it's visited by X amount of truckers, and they are familiar with that area, they'd be walking those trails. So if it was a trucker who's come and gone since, he wouldn't necessarily revisit the area. Maybe, maybe not, who knows. Or, of course, it could have been a drifter of some kind. Still risky, though. Still risky. I would say it's more likely someone is familiar with the area, because they seem to be fairly certain nobody would come on the bridge and witness this crime. I mean, this is in the middle of the day and on an unusually warm day. So they would probably be, like, if it was a regular cold winter day, it seems like there'd probably be less people out. I don't know. It's just the variables in this case are strange. Because once again, if there's only one way in and out from that bridge, from the spot that they were at, it's bizarre. And what kind of a disturbed individual? What are the options here? This is a one-time offender. So this is a guy that just saw these girls on one side of a bridge with no way out and decided to that he was going to kill them or whatnot. Or is this cold and calculated, and the guy was watching the whole time to see who would go on the bridge and any kind of targets that he would want to kill. And once he got the ones that he wanted, he made his move. But again, how could he have been so sure nobody would have been walking by? It's weird. Here's an interesting post on the true crime subreddit. People don't just go hang out in Delphi, Indiana. If someone from out of town, even remotely fitting a description, would have been noticed. You're right, it was an opportunistic killing, but it was also someone who was confident enough to attack two girls at once with what looks like strategic precision. They walked into the park, crossed a bridge, and he cut them off knowing they had no way out. That's not an accident, or at least it doesn't seem that way to me. And this is a very small town and wouldn't be the first choice of someone looking for secluded hiking trails. Growing up in and going to college in Indiana, I would have thought Hoosier National Forest or Brown County National Park would be much more secluded areas, not in a town of 3,000 people where normal residents would absolutely notice a car they didn't know with out-of-state plates. I don't know the killer knew anything, and I'm absolutely making assumptions, but the information and photographs you would need to strategize would be much easier to find about a larger, more well-documented park. Especially before this incident, images and video documenting the trails and layout of the park weren't easily available. And again, we have to revisit that trucker angle. And the parking for the trails is right off a highway that can be walked to in 10 minutes. So from driving down the highway, you park at the high bridge, which goes over the highway. And there are signs there. You could walk to the bridge where the girls were in 10 to 15 minutes. And supposedly there was at least a couple of people. So based on witnesses and whatnot, there were a few people in that area walking the trails. So again, that does seem very, very bold. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Someone else posted this. I worked at a news station in Fort Wayne, Indiana when this happened, and I know even we had trouble sourcing info about this park that wasn't from our Indy affiliates. I just think a local killer is way more likely. Other people pointed out it could have been someone who grew up in that area, but no longer lives there. So they know the area pretty well. They live elsewhere. I still don't really understand, unless if the killer saw that she was recording and just smashed the phone or tossed it in the water thinking that would destroy the video, and they were able to recover the video, that could make sense too. Just thinking about how that video survives. And then regarding other people theorized that he might have been stalking the two girls for X amount of time prior. I mean, how many people were at the trailhead, what was going on. So he could have possibly... Another very astute post, once again on Reddit. This was on True Crime Discussion. On the Delphi murders, you really have to ask the following questions, in my opinion. How did Bridge Guy know the girls were on the trail? You don't just walk around with a murder kit on a trail hoping to have some victims walk your way, do you? Most likely scenarios. He drove by and saw them getting dropped off, was on an adjacent property and spotted them. Access to some sort of trail cam, would have to be a local and have access to someone's property by the bridge, or was on the trail and spotted them. Now, again, if you're a criminal looking for crimes of opportunity, maybe you care about the ages of your victims, maybe you don't. But if you saw two younger girls get dropped off by someone and then that someone in the vehicle drive away, would those be a prime target? And would two younger girls be easier than one woman? I don't know. We also don't know who else was there that day. Were the other witnesses men or women? So, yeah, always a lot of unanswered questions, but okay. Then after he spotted them, this is when he springs into action. He gets his gun and murder kit, access to a car or a property for these items, follows and hunts them down towards the end of the bridge. Here's why I think it's a local or someone who has local access to a property in the areas. The navigation to the murder spot. If you look at an elevation map as an extremely flat part in a hilly area, you just don't stumble across this type of landmark. This is someone who feels comfortable in these woods. Look at the map of the area and you'll see that Ron Logan's property is in a perfect spot to pull something like this off. Doesn't mean that that was him or someone on his property that did it. I'm just stating that it seems to be the most obvious just from my perspective. If you go through the aforementioned points, it makes sense that this is someone who had access to the area, had been planning to do something of this nature for some time, and then finally got their opportunity. They seem to have done a good job executing their evil act. Unfortunately for them, modern technology might be what breaks this case wide open and leads us to the sick person or persons. My heart goes out to their families. This didn't have to happen. The response to this was, you posed some interesting questions and scenarios. I too have wondered about how this whole thing happened in the first place. I agree that he had some kind of weapon on him. So it's a question of whether he was just randomly looking for victims, had staked out the location, or had staked out these two particular young girls. Ron Logan's connection to the case is still in question, but I hope it's what eventually opens everything up. I think the murderer had some connection to Ron Logan, and that is what the police are trying to figure out while holding Ron Logan on the probation violation charges. One thing I've been wondering lately is about where the bodies were located. The initial search didn't find the girls. They were found the next morning. Does that mean their bodies were just missed by the search crew, or were they dragged to the location overnight? Either way, whoever did this has to have intimate knowledge of the property and probably accessed the murder scene through Ron Logan's property. At least in my opinion, it's the only way he could have been spotted driving away or to the scene. But who knows, perhaps he just got sickeningly lucky. That being said, the presence of billboards in 48 states makes me wonder about him being a traveler of some sort, a drifter or a truck driver or whatever. So perhaps this is someone who is transient in some way, but has some solid connection to Delphi. Of course, if the connection was so solid, they would have known who this was by now. I hope they solved this one. I can only imagine what the girls went through and what the families are currently going through. So that's actually quite interesting. Without falling for black and white fallacies, is this both a local and a truck driver and or transient? Does that cover all the bases? Because again, it seems, just the logistics of everything. Were the bodies there the whole time, or were they taken there? So here's another theory, obviously, that has been floated, that the girls knew the killer. So either through social media or whatever, and if he knew about them, possibly even following their social media, and he knew where they would be that day for some reason. I don't know. But here's another post from Reddit. It's quite interesting. I feel this is such a unique case in terms of understanding killer's motivations, given how little information has been released. Did he follow the girls for a long period of time? Maybe not just on the day, but social media. Does he know them personally? Given the recent press conference, I think they know who did it, but lack the final bit of evidence to charge and convict. I mentioned this to my stepdad yesterday. He has recently retired from the police force in the UK, and he said it was a smart tactic. They would bug the suspects' properties and then leak information so the suspects would then talk about it in the comfort of their own homes, and it proved successful. The other thing is, if school was out that day, they didn't have school that day and it was a warm day out, I'm sure the police must have checked on all the teachers, janitors, anybody that could have known the girls, or that they mentioned that they would be out there hiking that day. I mean, you would think that they would have checked all that out and gotten alibis for everybody. And of course, the other thing that we need to discuss, obviously, if the rumors are true that at least one of the girls put up a fight, do they have this guy's DNA? Because if one of the girls scratched him or whatnot, or he just simply left his DNA somehow on them, on the crime scene, in the area, whatever it was, and they have it. So then what are they waiting for? Is there a reason they haven't charged the guy yet? Perhaps, or, I mean, maybe it is more than one person? If more than one person committed the crime and they want both people, are they just waiting for the other one to slip and they have DNA? Well, we really don't know because, again, the police have played everything very close to their vest in this case. And for a particular reason, hopefully it pans out and the perpetrator and or perpetrators are all caught and the strategy worked. If it didn't work, did it prevent the guy from being caught? Because, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. We don't know what would have been the better option until it all plays out. Other posters discussing how the files were found. If the files, so some phones have the emergency feature where they could record audio, video, without going through everything on the phone, or if one of the girls already had her phone out and was recording, or the phone was already out, so then she just started recording the guy because he looked suspicious maybe, or who knows. And or was this recorded simultaneously to the cloud, and that's where it was recovered from? Were these files recovered from the cloud, and maybe the perpetrator deleted it from the phone? I'm not sure if they stated whether they had the physical phone or not. I think they have the physical phone because he would have just taken the phone probably. Because why would he just leave his prints on the phone, delete the videos, put the phone back? It's also been mentioned that law enforcement has said somewhere that there's part of a recording unreleased about the two girls talking about the creepy man following them. Again, I don't know the veracity of that. This is what's being discussed by web sleuths and such, which makes the whole thing even creepier because was he following them from earlier in the trail? And that's why it's also, the whole thing's very, very unsettling because if the guy does know the area and he knows there's no way from that area of the bridge, they have to come back towards the bridge, then he might make himself known there on the bridge after they were more than halfway across. And to further clarify the recordings, if it was Snapchat and if these recordings were if law enforcement got the recordings from Snapchat, maybe he did take their phone. If anybody knows more details about the physical phone and whether or not the police recovered it, feel free to leave it in the comments. There's been very little information released on what was found at the scene with the bodies and all those things. So if he did see them recording him and he did take the phone, so maybe he destroyed the phone, maybe not, whatever. And if those recordings are all from Snapchat directly or from elsewhere, whatever cloud storage or whatnot was recovered from, that could make sense as well. The only other information I was found, again, people were discussing law enforcement statements. Supposedly, one rumor is the phone was found away from the scene in a creek. So not directly with the bodies. All right, the last thing I'm going to go over in this episode, there's actually quite a lot to go over, so this will definitely end up being a podcast series. But from a local posted this on Web Sleuth February 17th, 2017, so very close to the time of the murders. Trucks used to go through downtown on SR 25, but about 5 years ago, the highway was rerouted around the city limits. Old 25 runs through Delphi, but new 25, Hoosier Heartland, is used for most trucks now. There is a hog plant in Delphi that has many trucks coming in and out 24 hours a day, delivering hogs, shipping out product, etc. 17,000 hogs are killed a day, so it's a lot of trucks. And that's disturbing in a whole different way, but yeah. So here's another post. This is a Web Sleuth's post. I seen it posted earlier that some thought that it could be a truck driver. My thoughts were that a driver really wouldn't have the time as they are under time constraints. My husband is a truck driver and he told me yesterday he was going to Delphi. I've talked to him about the case. I really wish I was on the trip with him. He picked up his delivery yesterday and doesn't deliver until tomorrow. In his memo from his company, it said overnight parking welcome. Well, I thought nothing about that really until I spoke to him today. He said the building where he delivered is empty. Not a person in sight, no cars in the lot, but the building is open and unlocked. I said maybe it's just the lobby area so drivers can use the facilities. He responded he could have went to the warehouse area if he wanted, which got me to thinking maybe Bridge Guy is a truck driver and he has delivered here several times and had a day off and explored the area, which wouldn't be suspicious as that's what historic sites are for. So maybe he's been there several times and had hours to get a feel for the area. I would think, though, if Bridge Guy delivered to this plant, that whoever checked him in would see the sketch and say, wow, that looks a lot like the dude who delivered today, especially with the reward and no personal ties to Bridge Guy, unless it was a drop and hook trailer with no personal contact. But then why have the 24 to 36 hour layover unless they had to reset their hours, DOT regulations? But I would think that law enforcement would investigate any deliveries and drivers for the 12th through the 13th and maybe even weeks, months before to see if any repeat deliveries were common with that day. The fact that the building is empty gives reason to think that a driver could walk off the site and back on and not even be noticed. I'm going to include a map with the trails. There is a section of the trail that goes in front of the place my husband delivered to, but it doesn't connect without a main street according to the map. Google said it was a 45-minute walk, but that was using the road and not as the crow flies. Also, something that I can't figure out is he said he didn't see anything about the girls. No billboards, no memory of, no home of, nothing. Maybe having that stuff would hurt more than help. Thoughts? Okay. He said he didn't see the Monon High Bridge from 25, but he will look for it tomorrow when he leaves to see if he does. Okay. So, yes, very interesting possibility of truck drivers who, in their off time or layovers or just a lunch break, might have explored the area and known it. So, plenty more to cover in this case. There's a lot of little details that need to be verified as well because we're not working with a lot of information. Apparently, law enforcement may or may not know what's going on and exactly who is responsible, possibly more than one party, possibly a serial killer also responsible for other crimes. And of course, somehow do they know that these previous persons of interest, one of which who has already committed suicide, are definitely not the perpetrator? Somehow, possibly, they know. So, hope you enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime, investigating every aspect in comprehensive, logical fashion. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms. You can check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, Facebook. And patrons, of course, get priority for case topic requests and or podcasters. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to Mindshock True Crime. I am your host, Bruce McGuire. This is the Delphi Case, Episode 2, Oddities. And this is just a cursory overview of just some of the things that are just really, really bizarre, including this just broad daylight abduction, murder of 2 individuals on trails that had other people walking on them. So just a very unique case where the perpetrator was also captured on film and audio. So there's a lot of things about this case that are odd, and I'm just going to do a background on the bridge itself and the 2 girls, and also dissecting possibilities that it might have been someone known to the girls. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If you like the podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms. You can check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, and Facebook. All right, I'm going to start with a pretty emotional article. This is also from the IndieChannel.com. Delphi Daughters, The Untold Story of Abby and Libby, Who Were Libby German and Abby Williams. This was published April 26, 2017, updated February 11th, 2019 by Katie Cox. Abigail, Abby Williams, and Libby German had a bond stronger than most. A rare mid-February Monday off from school prompted the pair to do what any teenage friends would do the day before. They had a sleepover. The girls shared a variety of interests, both loved art, both enjoyed sports, and both played alto sax in the Delphi Community Middle School Band. Abby brought her big box of arts and crafts over to Libby's house and sprawled them across the floor of Libby's room on that Sunday night. The girls painted photos of nature on the canvases as they giggled and shared intimate secrets like most young girls do. Earlier that day, the two had been in the backyard practicing their softball swing in excited anticipation of the upcoming season. Libby, 14, had convinced Abby, 13, to join her on the team this year. The next day was unseasonably warm, and the girls went out to enjoy another one of their shared hobbies by taking photos of one of their favorite places, the Monon High Bridge, Delphi's tallest scenic attraction. This was a bond that not even a killer could break. And I'll be returning to that issue where the Monon High Bridge, there have been some conflicting details where supposedly Abby had been to the bridge many, many times. Libby might not have been. And so, yeah, I'll be returning to that later. Abigail is a name that means father's joy. Abby's mom, Anna, can still picture every moment her daughter made her smile, from her artistic creations to saving a stray cat that she convinced them to keep despite mom's allergies. There weren't many people she wasn't the joy of, Anna said. She smiled all the time. Abby loved making things for other people. She'd make rubber band bracelets, paintings, and bead crafts for friends. There wasn't a form of art that Abby hadn't tried her hand at. She had more crafts than you'd know what to do with, Anna said. She loved to make things for other people. She loved to be around other people. Abby had recently been knitting tiny, colorful hats for newborns at the local hospital. Abby could often be found in the gym on the volleyball court, playing on the middle school team for the last 3 years. Her mother said she was really good, but her latest passion, softball, stemmed from her friendship with Libby. She and Libby were dead set on taking over the world by softball, said Anna. Abby had to convince her mother to let her join the team. When she agreed, they called Abby's grandpa Cliff to tell him the news. Grandpa Cliff was so excited he drove down from Michigan to take her shopping for her new gear. They bought new balls and matching bats and gloves. I said to my mother, she's 13 years old and she's never played. She said, there's no reason why she shouldn't be any good. It's in her blood, said Anna. Also in her blood was a knack for photography, a passion her mother also shared. Abby would run off with her mom's camera when they were at weddings or other events. She loved the outdoors and had an eye for the world around her, finding details most would miss. I do have pictures when she was little, and our friend had a beautiful garden, and I let her take it. It occurred to me how much, at 1.5 feet shorter, how different she did see things, said Anna. Abby's last photo would feature her on the majestic Monon High Bridge, enjoying another of her and her best friend's favorite things to do. Liberty Rose Lynn German. Liberty German dreamed of becoming a science teacher. She was interested in solving crimes or finding clues, and her curiosity in the sciences was serious business. She attended several classes at nearby Purdue University to try out different areas to see what interested her most. She was a mature student but still a teenager. Liberty's grandparents said you could always tell when she was home from school. You'd find a backpack near the door, socks and shoes strewn about the floor, a pile of books on the counter ready for homework, and a sidetracked Libby already working on something else. Often that something else was mixing up batches of cookies to share with her family. She was our baker, Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, reminisced. She could throw together a batch of cookies like nobody. She'd come in and have it done in a half hour or so, cookies laid out for everyone to eat for the rest of the night. And she'd make sure there were a few left for her grandfather when he got home in the evening, too. She'd save a couple. Libby's grandfather, Mike Patty, said, make sure Grandpa got a couple. For the Patties, words that came to mind when they think of their 14-year-old granddaughter are uplifting, outgoing, and kind. Libby loved to make people feel good. She would use sticky notes to leave messages of love and encouragement for others. It wasn't until after her death that her grandparents learned about all the little things she did. She scribbled a Post-it note on her 6th grade band teacher's podium, "Band is awesome." She painted an elemental table that made little blocks spelling out teacher for her science professor. And for her math teacher, another painting that read, "Of course I have problems, I'm a math teacher." She left me a note one day in my sun visor, said Becky. I love you. Thank you for all you do for me and my sister. Her grandparents said she was always thinking of someone else. She called me one day, Mike said. I had given her some money for some item at school or a function, probably a $10 bill. She called me up and said, Grandpa, with the change, can I give it to somebody else? There is someone who needs something. So that's the way she worked. It's the way she operated. Mike also fondly remembers the many days they spent in the yard honing Libby's softball skills. Her favorite position was first base. I'd pitch the balls and she was a good hitter. Very seldom would she strike out, her grandfather said. That sport was just one of the many things that brought her and her best friend Abby closer. Like Abby, she too had a passion for photography. Nature, the bridge, her friends, and family. She loved to take photos of the world around her. And on February 13th, she did just that, catching a killer in her lens. The bond. On Valentine's Day, instead of passing out candy to their friends at school after a long weekend, the girls were found dead in a wooded area less than a mile from the bridge. The mystery surrounding what happened on that bridge remains, but photos and video taken from Libby's cell phone have given investigators a glimpse into what may have happened in those final moments. Libby is heralded a hero for having the wherewithal to turn her camera on like she did so many times before and capture what was happening. Investigators have released 2 still images and a 3-second audio clip from that recording of the only person they have officially called a suspect in the crime, an unrecognizable man in a blue coat with evil intentions for 2 teenage girls. They did not leave each other's side. I don't know what happened out there that day. There's a chance, an opportunity for one to break off or split or make a break for it or whatever, said Mike. I look at you. No, 2 young soldiers that stuck together, covered each other's backs, 2 best friends, you know. I wouldn't leave my best friend's side either. Neither did they. Okay, and another point there on how this crime could have occurred with 2 individuals and why it's usually more rare for this is, yes, one would not necessarily have left the other even if they could get away. Someone shared an interesting case on Reddit in discussion that there was a case where there were 2 girls who were being assaulted by a group, I believe, not by one person. And she was already running away, but the cries of her friend made her go back to try to help, and then she was also killed. So she could have gotten away if she hadn't gone back for her friend. Very tragic, but does that explain how this could have happened? So the thing that strikes me as the most odd, of course, is if this is a crime of opportunity, there just happened to be just that window to get it done because there are people walking the trails. And the bridge guy knew that because he saw some of them, other people. So the bridge is obviously a landmark, so it's not that surprising that locals know about it or post about it. But there was an article on news.com.au, eerie photo of bridge where Indiana girls were murdered, posted 4 years ago by tragic mum. An eerie photo of the bridge where 2 young girls were murdered was posted 4 years ago by the mother of one of the girls. This was published in 2017. An eerie photograph of the old train bridge where the 2 Indiana girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were abducted and murdered was posted 4 years ago on Facebook by Abigail's mother. Anna Williams has featured the photograph on our Facebook page where friends are posting tributes following the murders of 13-year-old Abigail and Liberty 14. But Mrs. Williams first posted the photograph in September 2012 and discussed with friends on Facebook how pretty the historic bridge was, although it was a bit of a hike back home. Anna Williams' daughter and friend, known as Abby and Libby, vanished after being dropped off on the abandoned railroad bridge at 1 p.m. on Monday for a hike. So then they just go over details of the case and the timeline. Anna Williams posted a photo of the bridge in September 2012 saying it was really pretty most times of the year, although not so much at that time considering the wind. So this bridge was, of course, known to them, known to others. The other thing I was going to go over is that according to the obituaries, Libby is listed as having died on the 13th, Abby on the 14th. Now, this has been the result of much speculation online, as well as whether or not the bodies were moved to that location where they were found, which again is quite suspicious that they weren't found in the initial search, and I'll be going over that as well. So obviously there were warrants that were executed on different houses. So were those because they were trying to track the killer, or because they believed the girls might have been held at a second location before the third location where the bodies were found? If we're using that theory, the first location would be on the bridge during the first encounter. The second down, they were marched down the hill and they went somewhere. If they weren't killed right there, did they go somewhere else on a nearby property? Was this overlooked? So the autopsy reports are, of course, sealed, but law enforcement have stated that both girls died on the 13th and were murdered within minutes of the recording on the bridge. And I'll be going over various strange oddities regarding the view from the bridge as well. So someone posted this in response: the differing death dates in the obituaries has been discussed, just like everything else. No need for apologies. Things are rediscussed all the time. The coroner's report, the autopsy was not released, says both girls died on February 13th, 2017. The difference in the dates in the obituaries resulted from each family choosing different dates for their particular obituary. One chose the 13th, the day they went missing. One chose the 14th, the day they were found. It led to a ton of wild speculation early on, but really that's all there is to it. It's kind of weird making that final phrase, that's all there is to it. I mean, nobody really knows what happened exactly, so that's kind of a strange statement. And if the autopsy is sealed, what's the time of death approximate? If we don't have that, you can't really say that's all there is to it. But anyway, I'm not saying that's not the most likely explanation, but... Okay, so let's look at the bridge. There's actually a 360 video posted on RTV6, the indie channel Delphi Daughters, a 360-degree view of the Monon High Bridge Trail. And it's someone walking the trail, so you could see in every direction what it looks like. You could see quite ahead, and this is February, so there's not that many leaves on the trees. The trees are quite barren. So what strikes me as very, very odd is that you can actually see, some of the trail from the bridge. So some of the walking trails on either side, you could see the banks of the river. Now, would you necessarily see bodies? No, but you might see clothes or something scattered about if they were there. So, of course, some people theorized that the bodies were not there during the initial search. Also, in this 360 video, you can see the platforms on the side of the bridge and the platform that the girls were on when they were approached. So, on the southeast side. So, some people actually speculate that the bridge guy didn't come straight from the trail. He was already on their side of the bridge before they came, and he had scoped it out to make sure there weren't a lot of people. He waited for them to get on that side, then he walked past them across the bridge to the trail to make sure nobody was coming, and then he turned around and walked back towards them. And then, of course, with this theory, there was speculation that in the audio played for the family, they were discussing the bridge guy. Now, I think someone paraphrased that as there was a creepy guy, but they might have not used the word creepy. They might have just said, is it that guy again, or something of that nature. We also don't know if he ran into them at the trailhead, if they had a prior encounter or not, or if it was only on the bridge. All this information we do not know. In the next episode, I'll be going over the exact timeline and all the movements and the witnesses, but here, just in terms of what happened on the bridge, they moved to the side platform, which is also sketchy. This also, when you're looking at these videos, it explains why they might have done what he said, because they might have been afraid that he would just push them right off the platform. I mean, depending on it. From the video, again, he looks awkward. His voice seems very calm. But again, when you're in that exact situation, if their instinct was picking up something that's lost in the video, obviously, and also them being 13 and 14. If they were worried that he would just push them straight off the platform, they might do what he said, at least temporarily, before trying to run possibly across the creek or whatnot. The other thing that's strange, and I suppose there need to be audio tests done. I don't know if these audio tests have been done. If you would hear a scream, how far would you hear from the trails and whatnot? Because if they were screaming on the bridge, you would think that would carry. But if they were closer to the water, especially if the water was running, it's, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, again, see the bodies from the bridge. They were around 200 yards away down and up the hill if they were there when they searched. Would you search that random spot? Maybe not. So maybe the bodies were there the whole time, but apparently there were some clothes found or a shoe not quite with the body. So if there was colorful clothing in the river on a bank, it might be seen from the bridge. Obviously, it would have been getting dark closer to the time. There was a lot of people out there. But I don't know. Again, I'll be also dissecting the search and the timeline of the search and all those things in the next few episodes. But just here, from looking at these videos and the way the bridge is, but also that you can see these trails. So apparently there were other walkers on the trails who just missed them or came before them. So just this perfect window of opportunity is very, very bizarre. It's hard to rectify how this could have happened in this small window, particularly with video evidence. Again, this case should just be solved. It should be solved. It's very... If they had thought that they might have fallen, particularly in the water, would they have been searching by the creek initially? Obviously, they did that, they would be walking the trails to see if they can find them, but they wouldn't necessarily be right on the trail if they fell, got hurt, got lost, whatnot. So, yeah, it's all quite bizarre. The other thing, if he did have some kind of weapon on him, and if the girls moved to that side platform to let him walk by, and then that's when he maybe pulled the gun, told them to go, and he would have only had to grab one of the girls, right? Because if he had the gun, the other would probably comply, and fearing for the safety of her friend, it'd be easy to control both of them if he had a weapon of some kind. Maybe even if he didn't have a weapon, if he roughly grabbed one of them, I don't know. It's rough to really think about that. If the guy was some kind of park service worker or some kind of something that led them to believe he was some kind of an authority, like if he said they weren't allowed on the bridge or something that would gain that edge of authority to even easier control them, it's, yeah. So another video you can look at is Video 1, Retracing Libby and Abby's Steps Across Monon High Bridge. This was posted by Julie Melvin on her YouTube channel, March 5th, 2017. And you can see exactly how the platforms jet out from the side and how it is actually quite creepy being on that platform. You could lose your balance and fall. It's pretty sketchy. But right beyond the bridge, you can see how there is a path that goes beyond it. And then there's a hill there, which is most likely the hill that the guy was referring to when he said down the hill, which also means that recording, the audio recording of down the hill, probably wasn't him saying that on that platform edge. He probably walked them here first, and then he said that. And then the guys down the hill doesn't have to be together either. He could have yelled guys from before, said something else, got them to go with him to the end of the bridge, then said down the hill. But again, the whole thing is just so creepy and bizarre because you can see driveways of properties. You can see the other trail moving away from it. It's just, especially in February when the trees are barren, there's some clear views. So it's also almost stunningly unbelievable that the other people they were there that day, somewhere around 10 to 20 in the general multi-hour vicinity, but possibly only 4 or 5 that were there at around the time of the murder. And there were also photos posted on social media around the time also, but they just missed them, which is tragic because if another hiker was there just minutes, I mean, if they were just mistimed by minutes, they would have seen them and the guy. Unless, of course, you want to go down some of these really bizarre rabbit holes where some of the other hikers were in on it with the guy or whatever, covering for him. Obviously, there's no reason to believe that at this moment, but there were other hikers that also saw the bridge guy leaving. So apparently he left from the main trailhead area. He left towards the main trailhead area and was witnessed leaving, and that's where some of the sketches came from. And some of those were actually made before the video was released of the bridge guy that matched his description. So it seems like his point of exit was approximately known, where he walked back towards the trail, not going up someone's property on the other side of the bridge. So these are all just real oddities, and just watching the video from the bridge, looking at some of these 360 videos, putting yourself in the mindset of the killer, unless, as I've stated before, if he originally didn't want to kill them, like that wasn't the plan. I don't know what the plan would have been. If he's mentally not there and he doesn't understand what he's doing, I really don't know. It's kind of hard, but his voice is so calm.
Guys. Downhill. Guys. Downhill.
He's telling them, I guess, to get off the platform. He walked them to the other side of the bridge and then told them to go down the hill, which we can see there. And then what happened after that, we don't know. But there is, when you're going down on that incline, that does limit visibility more. So from people on the other side of the bridge. But again, it's really, really tough, especially missing the bodies. And I'll be going for their initial search, and then of course the fact that the search was suspended when it probably shouldn't have been, especially with the temperatures plummeting. So there's a lot of oddities even further to go over. In the next episode, I'll be going over the timeline and the witnesses, but I just wanted to highlight just how bizarre of a crime this is. In broad daylight, 2 targets, 2 victims, and the suspect must have, maybe he just didn't care, because obviously if he cared about not being seen, this is not a way to carry out a crime. But if he's mental and he doesn't care about being caught, does that explain doing this kind of crime? But if he's an experienced killer, if he's killed before, he's a serial killer, he's criminal minded, or he cares about getting away, the whole thing is just really, really strange. It seems very strange that he would pick this time to do it. And points against someone they knew. If it was someone who knew they were off from school and they liked the bridge, they might be. Geocaching is also a thing. I'll be going over that, and where there was a geocache near the bridge, and some of them and other family members have been in that area before geocaching and all of that. If it was someone known, they would have also known that at such an unseasonably warm February day, there'd be other people walking the trails. So that, no matter how you look at it, that's a really risky area and a risky time to try to pull something like that off, unless there's an unknown variable we don't know about. I mean, if he knew a property owner, if there was somehow gonna guarantee, like if he was a park worker, if there was if he wasn't completely mental and didn't care about being caught, there seems to be something we're missing, where he would have to have some kind of extra layer of security to not be afraid to do this if he cared about being caught. If he didn't and he's just completely mental, then I guess it wouldn't matter. Then he would do whatever, whenever. So if it was somebody with a psychotic break, I don't know. It's weird. Some of the profilers are saying he's some kind of guy. This is right before Valentine's Day. So if it was someone that was rejected, looking to take out his anger, frustrations, some kind of psychosis on innocent victims because of something that happened to him in his personal life. If it's an older guy who was married, maybe getting divorced, things of that nature, just trying to match up profiles with other crimes of this kind of nature, that could possibly be it. But it seems like if the perpetrator cared about getting away, it seems like this is not a good idea for someone trying to commit a crime, unless he did take them to some kind of secondary location that we don't know about yet. And I'll be going over that theory in a future episode if the bodies were not there during the search and moved there later. So a lot to go over in this very, very perplexing and tragic case. Very hard to stomach. It's pretty difficult to just try to understand these logistics and motivations, and just because it is so tragic and the victims are young and it's a relatively recent case, and by all accounts, due to the video and audio, it should already be solved. But in any case, if you found this podcast interesting, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms. Bringing awareness to cold cases is obviously the main reason to do these true crime cases. And if there are ideas offered that could help the case being solved, that would be a plus as well. So questions, comments, thoughts, theories, suggestions, just leave them in the comment section. You can also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, Facebook. Just check the links in the description. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. You are listening to the Delphi Case, Part 3, Witnesses and Timelines. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. As always, if you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If you like the podcast, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and Patreon. So once again, we are continuing our examination of one of the most tragic cases in recent memory. The two girls, Liberty and Abby, who were killed on February 13th, 2017. In the previous episode, we went over videos of what it looks like being on the bridge, how the platforms are laid out, and the likely chain of events that occurred during the encounter on the bridge, and then various different possibilities of what happened afterwards. There's a private driveway right there. Theoretically, the killer could have driven his car right up there, but that wouldn't make sense on how he left back through the trailhead area. So, but in any case, let's look at the timeline before, during, and after of the Delphi case. So, as if this case wasn't already tragic enough, there are more unfortunate events. On Monday, February 6th, so this is according to Becky Patty, that Libby actually reset her phone about a week before the murders because the phone was freezing. So after the factory reset, the Find My Phone application was not reinstalled. So when they were trying to use Find My Phone, it didn't work. So also tragic. So the reset wipes out all the data and applications supposedly. So if they reinstalled Snapchat or whatnot, they didn't necessarily reinstall the factory reset. This is on Libby's phone, so it's unknown what the situation with Abby's phone was. So on the day before the 13th, so this would have been Sunday, Anna took them to the park where they practiced softball. They had pizza for dinner. They listened to music and worked on an art project centered around the theme of chocolate. They watched movies with Kelsey and her friends. And Kelsey is Libby German's older sister. And then Abby slept over at Libby's house, which is Mike and Becky Patty's house, on Sunday night. 2:45 a.m., Libby and Abby made several videos of themselves. I guess not a lot of sleeping gets done on sleepovers. This is an unused snow day, so this is a day off from school. Also, the previous Friday was also a day off of school, so this is a 4-day weekend. Not sure if that's relevant or not, but yeah, so it's a 4-day weekend. If we are to assume The perpetrator might have been someone at the school, a janitor perhaps, or someone who knows people at the school, and they knew it was a 4-day weekend. Were they stalking the trails every day, looking for victims or timeline of opportunities? I'm sure law enforcement probably interviewed a bunch of people on the days prior, and if they didn't see him, they didn't see him, or it's something that law enforcement has not released. Okay, according to the Scene of the Crime podcast, Libby's mother, Carrie Timmons, sent Libby a Snapchat to say good morning. Libby sent back a selfie of herself in bed at 9 a.m. 10 a.m. is when Mike Patty thinks that the girls woke up. Derek, Libby's father, made the girls banana pancakes. Libby and Abby were bored, asked Becky if they could do something. Becky said if they could help her do some filing, they can go shopping later. They also painted a desk in Libby's room. Libby grew restless and wanted an outing. Around lunchtime, the girls asked Becky if they could go on a hike at the Monon High Bridge. Libby and Kelsey had been before. It was a common place for the family to go, and Libby had crossed the bridge many times. Kelsey said they had been there many times before, geocaching or riding bikes or enjoying the scenery and taking pictures. Abby's mother said that Abby did not ask her if it was okay for Abby to go. Abby had played in the creek before, but Anna did say she would have given permission if asked. Noon to 5 p.m., according to the February 2018 corrected Indiana State Police press release, a vehicle is parked at the old CPS building in the city of Delphi that was abandoned on the east side of Inaudible. This is from the scanner, I guess, call. Next to the Hoosier Highway between the hours of noon and 5 on February 13th, 2017. 12:30 p.m., approximate reported activity in the neighborhood on the south side of the Monon High Bridge. According to a controversial YouTuber, a woman chatted with Bridge Guy while toileting her dogs at the southeast end of the bridge at 12:30. According to some, this account is not true. Supposedly, the female homeowner who saw a man walking in the neighborhood near the south end of the bridge was not close to the barricades, and she was not walking her dogs. The female homeowner saw the younger guy about a quarter-mile south of the south end of the bridge. When she got in her car and approached him, he left. He was on foot. This homeowner is apparently the source of the younger guy sketch. Some believe this incident is unrelated to the murders. Okay. 1:23 p.m., Libby's father, Derek German, leaves the house headed for Frankfurt on an errand for his mother, Becky Patty. 1:26 p.m., a 16-year-old female witness is with a group of friends near the Freedom Bridge. They are getting ready to leave. The 16-year-old takes a picture on her phone. Approximately 1:27 p.m., the female witness sends the photo to her mother. The timing of the taking and sending of this photo later helps this witness remember when she saw Bridge Guy. 1:30 p.m., the 16-year-old female is near the benches near the Freedom Bridge, notices Bridge Guy, and says hello to him. Bridge Guy gave her a look that frightened her. She passed him on a narrow trail just a few feet away. She said he was her height, 5'6", or maybe an inch taller. Law enforcement now says 5'6" to 5'8". But you know what's weird? It is kind of hard to tell exactly how tall someone is. She said he was around her height. She's 5'6". So most likely he was not super tall then. But yeah, it's law enforcement says between 5'6" and 5'8". Later, when the 16-year-old witness heard Abby and Libby were missing, the witness thought about the man she saw and called it in. The witness described Bridge Guy without having first seen Libby's video. She gave law enforcement a description that matched Libby's video. At least a day before law enforcement released them, blue jeans, blue coat, and a hoodie pulled up over a short-billed hat, also some sort of covering over the lower half of his face. So if he had a scarf or something around the lower half of his face, that would dictate that he was trying to get away without being seen, or without being able to be identified perfectly. So there was some thought to try to hide his face. It's weird. All right. The witness is one of two witnesses responsible for the Newsboy Cap sketch that was not released until July 2017. So they didn't have a sketch until July? 1:30ish, Abby and Libby are allowed to go to the bridge if they could get a ride there and a ride home. Libby's sister Kelsey agreed to give them a ride on her way to a friend's house before she went to work. So this 16-year-old saw Bridge Guy. She's near the benches. Okay, saw a look that frightened her and then passed him on the trail. Okay, this is around, and she was at the bridge she was at the Freedom Bridge getting ready to leave 1:26 p.m. She passed him on a narrow trail a few feet away. At 1:36 p.m., Kelsey received a call from her boyfriend as they drove to the bridge. 1:38, 1:39 p.m., Kelsey believes this is when she dropped the girls off. At 1:38 p.m., Libby calls her dad, Derek German, and asks him to pick them up later. Per the Scene of the Crime podcast, Libby didn't call Derek until they arrived at the trails. According to Derek on Facebook, Libby called as they were pulling away from the house. It's a 7-minute drive from the house to the drop-off point. So they don't live that far away. According to the Scene of the Crime podcast, arrangements were made to pick up Libby and Abby between 3 and 3:30 p.m. Derek told Libby that he would call when he was close so that she and Abby could be at the pickup lot when he arrived. 1:45 p.m., while Kelsey estimates that she drops the girls off at 1:38 or 1:39, Derek believes they were dropped off at 1:45 because he thinks the girls called as they were pulling away from the house. Regardless, Libby's sister Kelsey dropped Abby and Libby off at the entrance to the Mary Gerard Nature Preserve. The parking lot at this entrance is called the Mears Lot. This is not the main entrance to the trail, which is at the Freedom Bridge further up the road towards Delphi. Between 1:45 and 2:07 p.m., Libby posted a photo of Abby on her Snapchat. Libby also posted this photo of the bridge. 2:07 p.m. on Snapchat, the timestamp is the time the photo was opened, not the time the photo was taken. You know, it's interesting, if they don't have her actual phone recovered, or if the phone was smashed or unrecoverable, they wouldn't know the time the photo was taken. They would only know the time it was opened on Snapchat. But would Snapchat know? So where did they get, again, the video? And if it was in the if this bridge guy was in the background of the video. So if Libby was taking the video of Abby and he was in the background, and it's also unknown whether or not they got, I mean, it's there. Yeah, there's so many unknowns. But if Libby was interested in forensic science and solving crimes, she might have thought the guy looked kind of sketchy, especially if he was on the southeast end of the bridge, under the bridge, around the bridge, and they came to the end of the bridge, then he walked back across the bridge toward the trailhead, and then turned around and walked towards them again. If that's how that went down, they would have definitely found that suspicious, because he's walking away, then he turns and walks back towards them randomly. That's bizarre. That would definitely throw up some red flags there. Okay, so important point here. Derek supposedly said that he thought Libby called at 1:38 when she was in the car with Kelsey. So it's, again, roughly 7-minute drive to the bridge from their house. So, and that's a 2:07 timestamp. So if they went from the Mears parking lot directly to the bridge, they could have been to the north end of the bridge in roughly 10 minutes. That's how long it takes to walk. And if the photo was 300 feet out onto the bridge, that would take 2 to 3 minutes. And you could slowly walk across the bridge in 6 minutes, according to some accounts. So the first photo could have been taken by 1:55 p.m. And they could have been at the southeast end before 2 p.m. So that's the best, apparently, that can be deduced from the available information. So obviously there could be up to a 5 to 10 minute discrepancy anywhere. Is that directly relevant? Possibly, but it seems like the bridge guy just got lucky because this is a narrow window. You have people in the area before and after the crime, but just not in those few minutes during. So that means they would have arrived in the parking lot anywhere between 1:30 and 1:45 p.m. Some people find it strange that Kelsey has supposedly given at least 3 different accounts of the ride to the Mears lot, either being on the phone with her boyfriend the whole time or part of the time, talking to the girls as she dropped them off. We don't know again. So, okay. So once again, let's go back to the Snapchat. 2:07 p.m. was when the photo was opened by whomever. So if that photo was taken, the photo could have been taken anywhere between 1:45 and 2:07 theoretically. So between 2:15 and 2:30 p.m. is the time that has been given. So Gray Hughes approximated that bridge guy was on the video between 2:15 and 2:30 p.m. Another hiker's photo was taken at the bridge at 3 p.m. that wasn't uploaded until 3:49 p.m. Okay. So that could have been nearly an hour after the girls were already off the bridge. So what is also estimated is at 2:30 p.m. approximately is when the audio of Guys Down the Hill was recorded. And of course, it is not known that this was at once Guys Down the Hill, or Guys was from earlier in the video or recording and Down the Hill was later. Okay, Derek has said that law enforcement told families that there is no audio beyond Down the Hill. So what's curious there, depending on the rumors and various things, there are some rumors that say that there's up to 40 minutes of recording, which possibly includes the entire crime. Others that there's several minutes worth. And from this one, what Derek is saying, that there's no audio. This is from Derek, not law enforcement. So again, we really don't know. So supposedly, bridge guy Libby and Abby crossed the creek from the south side, which goes from one property to another property on the north side of the creek, which is the Logan property where the bodies were found. And the property that they were on before crossing the creek, supposedly nobody was home at that property. Someone arrived home after 3:30 p.m. or so, and no one was there around 2:30 p.m. when Bridge Guy and the girls possibly crossed. Between 2:30 and 2:45 p.m. is an approximate time of murder. Of course, some other theories and speculation is that they might have been taken somewhere, either in a vehicle or marched somewhere else, killed somewhere else, then brought back to that location to be dumped for whatever reason. I'm not saying there's anything to that theory. It's just there's many different theories out there, but 2:30 to 2:45 p.m. is an approximate time when they could have been killed. There is another witness said that she entered the trails at approximately 2:45 or 2:50 p.m., parking at the Mears lot, the same lot where Abby and Libby were dropped off. This person arrived at 2:45, 2:50, and roughly 3 p.m., she also took a photograph standing on the south end of the bridge. She said she walked the bridge north to south, took a picture at the south end approximately 2:50 to 3 p.m. Some people analyzed the shadows and said that it was closer to 3 p.m., not 2:50. Again, would she have seen a shoe or some colored clothing if it was dropped? Maybe, maybe not, if she wasn't looking for it. Again, we really don't know. There were multiple photos taken of the bridge by this other hiker. So she stated this on Facebook. I even walked. She said she didn't hear or see anything at the time. I even walked all the way across the bridge and back. I only saw a guy when I first got there and another couple of guys once I got on the bridge. I didn't see the girls at all. I also didn't take the trail that leads to the right. I only took the trail that led to the bridge. So I'm assuming the trail that she said goes to the right, that would lead to the main trailhead at Freedom Bridge where supposedly Bridge Guy was spotted by others. The source of the sketch. So, yeah, this individual is getting there around, getting to the bridge around 3 p.m. So, yeah, she was a little too, she just missed them. What's bizarre is that some of the other witnesses earlier, I mean, I'll get to that in a minute. All right. So if she's getting there around 3, and again, if the bodies were found where they were found, how did the bridge guy get back? Like, where did he cut across properties? Did he go back up across the bridge? And what's the timeline there? Because if he's killing that, he killed them in a few minutes. It's bizarre. I mean, here's there are rumors supposedly that Libby was actually more severely beaten, brutalized than Abby. So again, I don't know if any of these are true. This is what people were discussing, but based on this speculation, there was a comment on YouTube about Libby potentially disrupting the killer's plans. How to disrupt a killer's plans: slow the pace, leave a trail for dad or someone to follow, shoes, clothes, jewelry. If phone was in shirt pocket recording, I may take my trousers off, especially if a passerby sees this. They are not going to dismiss a teen half naked in the cold weather. Most would at least come to tell you off, even if they did not clue in that something was wrong. If there was a shoe on the private road, I think Libby threw it there or slipped it off. I think if clothes were still visible in the river by the next day, Libby possibly grabbed a stick to secure it as they crossed, or threw it somewhere it would remain for a while. I know I would not let him know I did it until we were far enough away that he could not easily undo what I did. Also, I would let him know and get him to run scared and leave us be. Gather evidence, memorize features, clothing, video, photograph, keep a distance, distract with questions, talking, excusable, justifiable interruptions that are hard for him to keep a gun on both, such as bending, stopping to tie a shoe, faking an injury, a limp, keeping distance, one behind, one ahead, pretending you accidentally butt dialed someone, if you are willing to potentially forego the phone in lieu of a distraction. I am not suggesting any of the above is advisable, but can definitely see myself thinking of trying these things in such situation. Whether I would have enough courage to do so, of course, is another story. So basically, this theory would be that Libby, or one or the other, depending on which rumor is true, if one was more severely beaten than the other, he might have been more angry with one than the other if she was trying to stall or slow them down as they were walking, particularly if she was forensic minded and she was trying to leave a trail if she wasn't too panicked to do so. We really don't know. Other rumors is that there was a shoe, there was a shoe not found directly with the bodies. But in some of these photographs, again, from this other witness taken at the bridge around an hour afterwards, you don't see anything in the water or near. I mean, again, it's difficult because, other rumors were that the crime scene was pristine. So some people think, again, they might have been killed elsewhere and then brought to that location. I'll be going into that theory in future episodes, but let's finish with the timeline here. At 3 p.m., there was a male witness in his 20s arrived at the Mears lot with his girlfriend. They walked, so this is a couple, they walked slowly along the 501 trail towards the high bridge. Between 3:10 and 3:15 p.m., Bridge Guy passed this couple. Bridge Guy is heading west towards the Freedom Bridge, the main trailhead. So between 3:10, 3:15, Bridge Guy passes this couple. So the girlfriend did not notice Bridge Guy at all. Supposedly the couple were arguing. And I guess she was focused on her boyfriend. This guy in his 20s, this male witness, he did see Bridge Guy. He said that his hat was exposed but no hoodie. When this witness saw the photo from Libby's phone, it was released a few days after the murders, The witness called it in and said, "That's the man I saw." So this does give us hope that the photo, that this isn't just an everyman, he's identifiable. The 16-year-old female witness and the 20-something male witness are the sources for the newsboy cap sketch. Neither was very happy with the sketch. They said that the man was not wearing a newsboy cap. The mid-20s male witness has stated that the man he saw was definitely not the new sketch of the younger man. It was the older man, the one that is in the video, in Libby's video. Both witnesses say that Bridge Guy was wearing a hat that looked like a painter's hat, not a newsboy hat. A painter's hat. The man said painter's cap and the girl said short brim. Both witnesses say that Bridge Guy was wearing a scarf covering the lower part of his face. Both witnesses were with people who did not notice Bridge Guy. Neither witness has ever said that they could pick Bridge Guy out of a lineup, and it's unlikely that they could. Okay, the only difference is that the 16-year-old witness said that Bridge Guy had a hoodie over his hat. The mid-20s male witness said that he did not have a hoodie, just a hat. So one possibility, of course, is that the hoodie came off during the murders and Bridge Guy didn't bother to put it back up. Because the 16-year-old saw Bridge Guy at the Freedom Bridge trailhead at 1:30 p.m. 1:30 p.m. approximately. Okay? All right. And the 20s male witness saw him between 3:10, 3:15. Okay? Murder possibly occurred between 2:30, 2:45. That's the timeline that we can put together here. So at 3:11 p.m., Libby's father, Derek German, is crossing Wilson's Bridge and leaves a message on Libby's phone that he's almost there. Libby's phone goes to voicemail. Derek leaves this message at the same time that the male witness and his girlfriend are passing Bridge Guy, who is heading west towards the Freedom Bridge. 3:13 p.m., Derek calls Libby when he arrives at the Mary Gerard entrance, the Mears parking lot. No answer. Derek also sends a text. 3:15, he starts on the trails. 3:20, at the 5 trail intersection, Derek encounters a man wearing a flannel shirt guy, which is what he's referred to in the Delphi case online. There is speculation about who exactly this guy is, but apparently he's a local and he knows the trails. Supposedly the police have cleared him. Okay, so flannel shirt guy was walking west on the 501 trail coming from the bridge. Flannel shirt guy said he had not seen the girls. Flannel shirt guy told Derek that there was a couple down by the bridge, but no girls. Okay, so this is the arguing couple. Now, what's strange is what was Flannel Shirt's guy entire itinerary? When did he get to the bridge? All these people just missed the murder? I mean, again, how lucky is this guy? Now, if he's covering his face, if Bridge Guy is covering his face, that means he does care about not being seen or identified, does it not? And yet he still risked this crime, unless maybe he had some kind of psychotic break or, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to dissect all of this, okay. Approximately 3:20 p.m., Flannel Shirt Guy said he had not seen the 2 girls at the bridge, so Derek walks the 505 trail that does not go to the bridge. It goes down to the Mary I. Gerard Reserve along Deer Creek. And 3:24 p.m., he calls Libby's phone again, no answer. 3:30 p.m. is when the property on the other side of the creek where the bodies were found on the Logan property, this other property, the son of the woman who owns this property gets home at 3:30 p.m. Now, there's a lot of speculation about this guy. Supposedly, he was not living in the home, but he's the son of the woman who owns the home. Okay, anyway, 3:32 p.m., Derek tries Libby's phone again, no answer. 3:33 p.m., Derek is back at his vehicle and he calls Becky Patty, that's Libby's grandmother, to see if the girls are already home. Derek tells Becky Patty that Libby is not answering her phone. 3:34 p.m., Derek calls his sister, leaves her a message asking if she has heard from the girls. 3:35, Derek walks to the Freedom Bridge. Along the way, he encounters Flannel Shirt Guy again. So it is unknown, according to some of these write-ups online, if Derek ever crosses paths with the couple or the other hiker, the other female hiker who took photos of the bridge at roughly 3 p.m. from the south end. The other thing that's weird, Flannel Shirt Guys just walking the trails randomly back and forth all the time. Now, if he normally does that every day, all the time, okay. But he really didn't see Bridge Guy? Or did he see Bridge Guy and didn't say anything for whatever reason? Again, I don't know. I'm just trying to go through all the different theories here. And if Flannel Shirt Guy, can that be Bridge Guy? It doesn't seem like it because he's not really on his way out. He wouldn't be going back and forth all the time. It just does not seem likely that would be the case. Okay, 3:49 p.m. The female hiker uploads her photo to Snapchat at 3:49 p.m. The photo that was taken around 3 p.m. Okay, Derek calls Libby again at 3:57 p.m. No answer. Calls Becky Patty 3:58 p.m. 4:12 p.m. Becky calls Kelsey, who missed the phone call thinking it was a robocall. But when Becky calls again, Kelsey notices, so she calls Becky back. Kelsey's at her boyfriend's house. Becky asked Kelsey if she had heard from Libby, and Kelsey said no, she had not. 4:17 p.m., Becky tries to call Libby again, no response. She also calls the girls' friends to see if any had heard from Abby or Libby. Nobody did. 4:19 p.m., Becky speaks with her daughter. They decide to go to the trails to look for the girls. 4:20 p.m., Becky calls Mike Patty, her husband, to let him know the girls are missing and they're going to the trails to search with others. So Mike Patty is in Lafayette, 30 minutes away. He says he'll leave work as soon as possible and meet them at the trails. 4:21 p.m., Becky's son, who is also Libby's uncle, arrives home. He also lives with Mike and Becky Patty. And he also goes to the trails. And he drives one of the possible routes the girls could have taken if they wanted to walk home. So, yeah, a few minute drive, not the longest walk in the world. Okay, Becky drives the other route that the girls could have taken if they decided to walk home. Okay, at 4:30 p.m., Becky arrives at the Mears lot and sees Derek's car and other cars of everybody coming to help look. Also around this time, Kelsey leaves her boyfriend's house, nervous that the girls are missing, and drives to the trails. The family tries to call AT&T. They can't locate the phone because Libby does not have Find My Phone installed. Kelsey crosses the high bridge, proceeds down the hill at the south end while yelling for Abby and Libby. Kelsey saw what looked like disrupted ground, as though someone had recently slipped down the hill there. It's actually the first time I've noted this detail. This is just a write-up on Reddit, on the Delphi Murders Reddit, citing all available information regarding to the timeline. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I guess there's disrupted ground as though someone had recently slipped the hill there. So we're looking at between 4:30 and 5 here, somewhere around that time, after 4:30. So there were no tracks visible after that disturbed ground. In any case, Kelsey and others knocked on the doors of the homes at the south end of the bridge, and only one person was home. They went back across the bridge and back to the parking lot. It's also that people should have asked them, because this is the first documented search of that particular area where they were at beyond the south end of the bridge. Did she see anything, and would she have seen anything if it was there? Because it's still light out at this time. So this is between 4:30 and 5. Sunset is 6:20 p.m., I believe. at that time in that area. So yeah, it's still light out. Would she have seen a piece of clothing, a shoe, whatever, if it was there at that time? Because this is no longer a random witness or hiker just going for a leisurely stroll. This is someone specifically looking for people, specifically looking for any trace of people. So, okay, 4:30 p.m. Also, Becky tries to reach Anna, Abby's mother, via cell phone, is unable to make contact. Becky drives to Anna's house and is told by a family member that Anna is at work waiting tables. Becky drives to the restaurant. While en route, Anna calls Becky back. Anna says this happened between 4:30 to 5 p.m. So this is simultaneous to Kelsey and others searching at the bridge. Anna left work, headed to the sheriff's station. Anna called a friend, asked him to check the city park for the girls. 5 p.m., Mike Patty arrives and parks across the street in the Mears driveway. Mr. Mears joined the search. Mike continued to call Libby's phone repeatedly. The phone is now going straight to voicemail. So I suppose that means the previous no answers, the phone still had a charge, so it was ringing, either turned to silent or ringing and not turned to silent. And now, apparently at 5 p.m., the phone is now possibly dead, going straight to voicemail. 5:20 p.m., Mike Patty reports the girls missing to local police. The first officer supposedly arrives at 5:25. This is an unconfirmed statement. Around 5:50 to 6 p.m., Delphi Fire Department tones were struck. Secondary calls go to the volunteer fire department, who responded in fire department vehicles and personal vehicles. At 5:30 p.m., Kelsey goes to work, and she's 1 hour late for her 4:30 shift. Now this, to me, it strikes me as slightly strange because the girls still have not been found. But she might not have specifically known that Mike Patty, it's unknown whether she knew Mike Patty reported the girls missing to local police. Did she think there was nothing left she could do? I don't know. 6 p.m., a search effort involving law enforcement volunteers, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Delphi Police Department, Delphi Fire Department, Department of Natural Resources joined in the search. And a quick aside here, some people believe that if this is a worker, some kind of government worker, state park worker, they believe it's possible he might have actually been part of the search. Even though he left the area, did he come back as part of the search to see what was going on? I don't know. If I had to immediately guess, I would say no, but if it was a local, then maybe yes. If it wasn't a local and it was just a truck driver passing through who was familiar with that area, there's definitely other unknown variables here, which makes it very, very difficult to account for some of these factors. So between 7 and 8 p.m., the commander talked about ending the search for the night and starting at light. So this is very, very bizarre to me regarding the search, because these are now endangered young girls. Even if there was no foul play suspected, these are critical hours for a variety of reasons, including dropping temperatures. Now, in 2017, when there's all this modern technology and equipment, searchlights, all these things, is there a justification for suspending the search? It's not like this is a week later where they most likely would not have, if they had succumbed to the elements by a week later, if it wasn't foul play. But, I mean, this is within 24 hours of them going missing. These are the critical hours right now. So, yeah, perhaps, that definitely was not handled well. They should have kept searching. And, it's tough. Carroll County Sheriff Toby Leesenby says they tried pinging the girls' cell phones without success. Leesenby believed the cell phones were either out of battery life or turned off intentionally. Okay, at 11 p.m., the 11 p.m. news regarding this. Okay, as soon as the 16-year-old female witness heard the girls were missing, she called in a report of seeing a man whose expression frightened her at the Freedom Bridge 1:30 p.m. It's unknown when exactly the female witness became aware the girls were missing, but she reported the 1:30 p.m. incident before the bodies were discovered, before law enforcement released Libby's photo of Bridge Guy. She described Bridge Guy and what he was wearing before seeing the photo. However, Bridge Guy was wearing a scarf over the lower part of his face and a hat pulled down over the upper half. It's unlikely this witness would be able to pick Bridge Guy out of a lineup. The witness was one of two responsible for the Newsboy Cap sketch released 3 months later. I can't believe it took him 3 months to release that sketch. I mean, 3 months is a long time. Other people in the area might have forgotten if they had seen it. This is bizarre. I mean, we're in 2017 and these departments, it seems like they really failed these girls unless they have some kind of strategy we don't know about and they really do have the guy and maybe they suspect there was a second guy and they want to get him too. I mean, we don't, unless there are these unknown variables, it seems like law enforcement just did not do a good job here. At around 11:30 to 11:45, the search ended for the night. Most of the people in the woods at that point were law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical services. Department of Natural Resources responded as well. So here's what's really bizarre. So at around between midnight and 1 a.m., Sheriff Toby Leesenby said that he thought the girls were likely with a friend. So I guess he thinks the family's just completely incompetent, or they have friends the family doesn't know about, even though they called all these friends. There's no record of them leaving the park. They're just completely out of touch. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. I don't think I can be a fan of Toby Leesenby now, because why would you randomly decide that? So apparently some people continued searching through 2:30 p.m. and possibly family that continued beyond then to 4:30 a.m. Conflicting reports there. Carroll County Sheriff Toby Leesenby said he did not believe there was any reason to expect foul play or that the two 8th graders were in danger. Oh man. Leesenby said that the biggest challenge facing the girls was exposure to the elements. Isn't that a form of danger? These are minors. A Redditor has made this response in response to the search, and I will read this. I'm sorry, this was about a year ago. I'm sorry I want to smack him. I have law enforcement training and have taught many law enforcement officers over the years and can say that if he is speaking the truth, he has no business being chief. First off the gum, chief is in a position where you must provide a presence in which people feel they can trust you and they are in good hands. Chewing gum goes completely against that persona and he should know better. Chewing gum, smoking, things like that should be done away from the camera. Secondly, this team made the decision regarding the search the first night is not something a true chief would say or especially do. You are hired to lead and must do that especially in emergency situations. Thirdly, no seasoned police chief or sheriff would assume there is no danger to the public, especially considering how the girls were found. That goes against investigative training. You always investigate and prepare for the worst while following where the evidence takes to, not the other way around. For Pete's sake, the scene was bad enough to call the FBI and that officers were talking of being disturbed by it. This is not a time for the old, oh sure, no need for concern. So he's referring to statements Leesenby made after the bodies were found as well. I realize he doesn't want paranoia, but the situation dictates that yes, the public very well could be in danger in this case. Chief Leesenby is either talking as a deer in the headlights and didn't realize what he was saying, or he's incompetent. This goes against basic police training seriously. I am repeating myself, but the whole time I was watching this interview, I kept yelling at the screen, who the heck trained you? You know better. Also, this is the very first time I've heard anyone say that the girls had gone off to friends or relatives' houses without telling their guardians before. If I remember correctly, both Becky, Libby's grandma, and Abby's mom have said in several interviews that the girls did not do that, and that was one of the reasons they got alarmed and looked through the night even when police suspended the search. And I can't even imagine myself in that situation. The police suspend the search without finding them. I mean, as bad as the situation is, I mean, they probably felt very abandoned by the police. I mean, hopefully some officers stayed and helped them search. That's just, I mean, as tragic as it is, that just makes it even more tragic and heartbreaking this whole time that they might have felt abandoned by the people that were supposed to be helping them. I have a huge problem with Chief Toby's excuse that the group, including search and rescue, firemen, EMTs, and state police, would have decided they're probably at a buddy's or mom's house. Then not even test that hypothesis. That's BS. Every single law enforcement officer would have had people already calling friends, relatives, and classmates by that time. It's Investigation 101. I don't believe for a second that search and rescue would have stopped for a second unless they had been told to. It's not smart and it's not congruent with their or law enforcement's training. These girls were not even in high school yet. It would have been a priority search. This guy is just trying to cover his butt because he totally screwed up, is getting grief for it, and figures he could pass off the responsibility for it. Then maybe people would stop asking that question or at least give him a break. I had to turn this off because I got so angry with him. He knows that they might have been able to save one, possibly both girls, had they found them that night. Too dark is a load of poop. Unless there's a probability of injury to searchers or the weather is too severe, a competent chief would not have called off a search for that age of child at that early of a stage. He also said he knew that family and volunteers were searching through the night without police presence. That's nonsense too. At least where I live, police are taught to treat every missing persons case as a death investigation in the back of their mind. It's what makes the investigation as close to legally sound as possible. You may approach it outwardly as a simple case, may even think it to yourself or say that to the family. But as a trained investigator who knows that any call may see you someday ending up in court, every serious call is filtered through that lens. Heck, my cops were doing this 20 years ago. This is 2017, for crying out loud. I wouldn't be surprised if some of his team protested that night and he put his foot down, as I can't see with all those assembled that no one voiced belief they should continue. It was winter, dark, kids not dressed for dropping temperatures. Nope, don't believe him. Calling off the search was his call and he screwed the pooch. So yes, again, very, very bizarre that they called off that search within hours of them going missing. Like a lot of times people aren't even reported missing for 2-3 days later. And even in those cases, I mean, people have survived for longer than that. But if it was a week or 2 weeks out, you could maybe see more justification for not searching during the night hours in the winter. But that close to the disappearance, I mean, we're talking hours. If they were both injured or hurt, I mean, it's rough. That's really rough. So at 7:40 a.m. was sunrise. 8:15 a.m., searchers, law enforcement arrive, collect gear, start searching. 9 a.m., search resumes. Canine units and dive teams are brought in. They should have done the canine thing. Why not do that right away? It's just a scent. Okay, around noon, the bodies were discovered. A volunteer found the bodies of Libby and Abby on the Logan property on the north side of Deer Creek. The rumor is that one of Abby's relatives, not necessarily direct relative, was with the group that found the bodies. Between 12 and 12:30 p.m., there were calls on the radio that the bodies had been found. According to Kelsey, she was searching on a path immediately below the bridge. Another search party near the river found a shoe. They yelled up to Kelsey, asking about the type of shoe they found and whether it belonged to one of the girls. It was a shoe type. Kelsey yelled that it was Libby's shoe. At that point, one member of the party where the shoe had been found saw 2 deer. He used his phone to zoom in on the deer and shifted his view angle downward from the deer and saw the bodies. Apparently, some of the girls' clothing was found in the river. And again, would that clothing have been visible from the top of the bridge or from the disturbed ground that Kelsey had noticed the afternoon before? Also, just a clarification, supposedly the bodies were found not right next to the creek, but up the hills a certain ways where you may or may not have been able to see them from the creek or from the bridge, especially if they were covered in leaves or whatnot. The other thing that's kind of alarming is when you look at these maps, I mean, you have a cemetery on the other side of the property, and police did have an area set up there. Delphi Cemetery. There was also a report, 12:39 p.m. that day. Why wasn't an Amber Alert issued when girls were reported missing in Carroll County? By 1 p.m., searchers and law enforcement had switched to evidence recovery search. Dive team called, responded, used Mustang suits to dive after the bodies were found. So would that mean they were not looking for bodies in the water prior? They were just looking for evidence? Okay, so media outlets announce and report on the discovery of bodies, 1:05 p.m., 1:06 p.m., 1:09 p.m. And 2 p.m., there's a press conference. The police confirm the two bodies. They do not release identities. At 4 p.m., Delphi Community School Superintendent Gregory Briles said that while school and law enforcement have not made an official announcement, it was his understanding that the bodies were those of Libby and Abby. Briles said that grief counselors were at the school, would be there for the rest of the week. 8 a.m. on Wednesday, February 15th, 2017, the autopsies were performed, and at noon that day, the Carroll County Sheriff Department and Indiana State Police held a joint news conference confirming the identities of the bodies. At 7 p.m. that night, so 2 days after the murder, Indiana State Police released the photograph of the man reportedly seen on the trail. And this is, of course, the photo from the girl's video. I don't know why it took them so long to get the sketch, though. It's just bizarre. So, in the rumor mill area, on Thursday, February 16th, there were search warrants. There was a search warrant at a Delphi family farm. Multiple people questioned. Also, a search warrant on another house on Bicycle Bridge Road. And some people are saying that these are reliable sources, that neighbors saw police carrying multiple computers out from one of these residents being searched. And also there were rumors that Libby had been messaging one of these individuals, that police had removed computers from his house. Although I do suppose it's possible the girls had messaged people on social media that have nothing to do with this, right? I mean, I don't know. Also, there are other homes searched regarding other investigations that they thought might have to do with it. That Friday also, there was a sketch created that Friday, and this is of the younger man, the younger sketch, but it wasn't released for 2 years. Okay? It might have been this guy might have nothing to do with the crime, though. That Sunday, February 19, 2017, the police said the man in the photograph is now considered a suspect. It wasn't until the following Wednesday, February 22nd, where it was revealed that Libby was the one who recorded the audio and video of the suspect. And they released the voice saying "down the hill." They also said that there is more footage from Libby's phone, but they would not be releasing it because the investigation is ongoing. This is 10 a.m. press conference, Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017. So that is the layout of the timeline, the witnesses, the comings and goings of everybody. Like always, there seems to be a lot more questions than answers in some of these cases where it really should be solved, but it is as of yet unsolved. Which variables are related, which aren't, we still don't really know. But hopefully this thing will be solved soon, and this podcast series is ongoing. There's quite a few other issues to go over, which we'll be going over. If you found this podcast interesting and or informative and support bringing awareness to cold cases and other true crime cases, feel free to donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms. You can check us out at Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, Facebook. Just check the links in the descriptions. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Case series. This is episode 4, The Dark Hours. And we will be examining one of the most perplexing issues of the case, which is if the bodies were not left approximately where they were killed, if they were killed within a short time frame of the video being recorded of Bridge Guy, and as the official narrative, so to speak, lays out, if the bodies were not there, but they were there the next day, so there was searching all through the night up until a certain point, then there were a few hours, the dark hours, where a potential murderer or accomplice may have moved the bodies back to that particular area to be found. And again, a lot of issues here. There are people that say you would have noticed the bodies or possibly a piece of clothing from around the immediate bridge area. Of course, it was reported that there was some ground disturbances down the hill right next to the bridge. So obviously that area was searched to a certain extent, and then across the river where they were found, it seems, especially with the trees barren at that time of year, that the bodies would have been noticed if they were there. Now again, there's not 100% certainty on that, but there's a couple of anomalies also that we need to go over, because of course this is Mindshock, and we are going to delve into every aspect of the case, upturning every stone possible, because as of yet, of course, the case remains unsolved. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you're still not getting the notifications, make sure you allow your device to have them come through. If they're still not working, you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock to manually peruse our back catalog and also to see when the latest episodes are being released in various true crime cases and other topics. To keep awareness up in this case, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, because that is how cases get solved. Someone remembers something, someone remembers a detail they might not have thought was important, or something of that nature. So keeping a lot of these cases in the public eye for as long as possible, as much as possible, oftentimes is the only way that justice can be served. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. So, there, of course, a lot of people are critical with how law enforcement handled this. That includes many people to even think that there's some kind of law enforcement element here. Someone's being protected. I'm not going to be going down that rabbit hole for this episode. I will be examining that in a later episode. So here is an article on dailymail.co.uk, and the title here, former prosecutor in unsolved Delphi rail track murders of two teens say the killer left behind at least 3 signatures at the odd crime scene, which had a lot of physical evidence, as victim's sister renews her appeal for justice. And a lot of people don't like the Daily Mail as a source. Of course, that would be a genetic, logical fallacy. But everything they're stated here can be verified. So the people that are too lazy to listen to the podcasts or go on or check the links here, even all of the links here for which they got their information for, you can verify all of this information. That's why genetic logical fallacies are so silly, because they didn't make up any of this information. They're basically relaying it. So if you have a problem with the prosecutor saying this, or you think he's lying, that's perfectly fine, but the dailymail.co.uk is simply reporting what he stated. So here we have a couple of notes here. New podcast examines infamous unsolved murders in Delphi, Indiana. Liberty German, 14. Abigail Williams, 13. Vanished February 13th, 2017. They captured video and audio of the killer on an abandoned railroad bridge. So this article is stating that this was indeed the killer. Although I don't know how they would know that, but it could either be the killer or an accomplice of some kind, or possibly even not. But anyway, their bodies were found the next day in a wooded area about a half-mile away. Former prosecutor Robert Ives spoke out in a new podcast about the case. Revealed that the odd crime scene had a lot of physical evidence. Said there were at least 3 signatures, but that scene may have been staged. I'll say that again. There were at least 3 signatures, But that scene may have been staged. Keyword there, staged. And I'll be getting into that, whether or not the bodies were there during the initial search. Police have released very little information about the crime scene and murders. Libby's sister, Kelsey, is now studying forensics and makes public appeal in case. This was published August 27th, 2020, written by Keith Griffith. The former prosecutor who worked on the infamous unsolved murders of 2 teenage girls in Delphi, Indiana, has spoken out on a new podcast about the case, revealing chilling information about the odd crime scene. Liberty German, 14, Abigail Williams, 13, vanished February 13th, 2017, while hiking the Monon High Bridge. Their bodies were discovered the following day in the woods about a half-mile from the trail. The quick-thinking teens were able to capture video and audio of the killer, portions of which have been released by police, but so far investigators have been unable to zero in on a suspect. Or at least, if they have not revealed that. Now, Liberty's sister, Kelsey, who is studying forensic psychology to help find her sister's killer, has renewed her appeals for information in the case, tweeting on Monday, "Someone out there knows something, so say something." And former Carroll County prosecutor Robert Ives, who worked on the early stages of the case, revealed more information to the HLN podcast Down the Hill, The Delphi Murders. In 3 years since the murders, police have released very little information about the crime scene, including how the 2 teens were killed and what kind of physical evidence was present. But rumors have long circulated that the crime scene was bizarre and shocking to investigators, with unusual elements that police have been reluctant to reveal publicly. Now, Ives reveals that the crime scene was nothing like murders he had encountered in the past, where typically a body is found with some evidence, such as shell casings present. Quote, "There was a lot more physical evidence than that at the crime scene," I've said, "and it's probably not what you would imagine or what people would think I'm talking about. It was not your normal, a person was killed here crime scene. That's probably all I can say about it," Ives said. Very cryptic. Ives said that the scene was odd and displayed at least 3 signatures, which are unique behaviors by the killer. However, Ives raised the possibility that elements of the scene had been staged in an attempt to trick investigators by sending them down a false path. And this is, of course, we're post-2000 here, the social media age, a lot of true crime shows on TV, so it's much more likely someone would do this 2017 than in 1985 or something of that nature. Retired FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, who has worked on cases such as the Green River Killer, explained on the podcast that a signature at a crime is behavior that is over and beyond what is necessary to complete the crime, and is generally behavior that is satisfying to the offender, whether it is sexually satisfying or psychologically satisfying. On staging, she explained, staging tends to be done most often by somebody who knows the victims. I've said even at the crime scene, there was a lot of physical evidence of one sort or another, which would lead logically to one person or another. It never led to one particular person. The Indiana State Police continue to refuse to release any details about the crime scene, saying that it could compromise the investigation. I've said that in the early stages of the investigation, dozens of search warrants and subpoenas were issued, most seeking cell phone locations and the identity of cell phones. Unfortunately, he said that the law does not allow for the bulk collection of cell phone data from a nearby cell tower without a probable cause that a particular phone was involved with the murders. Initially, I thought, and I still think, it was somebody local, Ives said of the killer, noting of the hiking trail that it's not a tourist spot and that an outsider would be unlikely to visit. Ives indicated that there was no reason to believe that the killer knew the two girls would be hiking there that day, as their decision to go for a walk had been spontaneous, and there is no evidence that they were lured to the trail. So it's also unclear whether this determination was made because they had explicit access to all of the girls' social media and communications, or if they had other multiple accounts that were not looked at. I mean, some teenagers do have more than one type of account on each platform, specifically for the purpose of perhaps talking to people they don't want their parents to know about. But again, unclear if they had access to all of that, or if the girls had multiple accounts. I tend to think it's a local, Ives said, but adding maybe it was a random murder, maybe it was a serial killer. Yeah, that's not very helpful, is it? In January, Liberty's mother, Carrie Timmons, criticized the police investigation for failing to identify a suspect after 3 years. And one does have to wonder, at what point is withholding all of this information really beneficial to the investigation, or how much is it compromising it if it has no chance of being solved anyway? And releasing all the info or a lot more info is the only way to possibly get someone to submit relevant information to a suspect. Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter, head of the lead agency in the investigation, has insisted repeatedly that the slaying murders of both girls have not turned into a cold case. The murders shook Delphi, a small town of 2,877 people, set amid farm fields about 60 miles northwest of Indianapolis. Within days of the killings, authorities released 2 grainy photos of a suspect walking along the abandoned railroad bridge the 2 girls had visited. Liberty had posted photos of herself on Snapchat walking on the bridge the day she and Abigail vanished. Authorities also released an audio recording of a man believed to be the suspect saying "down the hill." And again, this is all interesting phrasing, because if there's more than one person involved, the audio might not even be from the bridge guy in the photographs, because we don't exactly know what happened. 2 different sketches. They might have misidentified a sketchy guy that was walking around there, but maybe they no longer believe that that guy was the guy that harmed them, and the guy that harmed them is the guy on the audio. Who knows? Or, of course, there could be more than one guy. The images and recordings came from Liberty's cell phone, and police hailed her as a hero for recording the potentially crucial evidence. Superintendent Carter issued a direct appeal to the killer during press conference when the footage and audio was released, saying, "We believe you are hiding in plain sight. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you." And that does conflict somewhat with the possibility that they were playing a lot of this close to the vest in order to lull someone into a false sense of security, to believe they're looking for someone else. I don't know. Again, these actions are hard to dissect without knowing for sure what happened. So now let's move on to information coming closer to the time of the crime. And interesting to see how rumors developed from early on and how accurate they were. I did want to go to this particular blog, evilunsolved.blogspot.com, which has some very, very astute observations, thoughts on various different cases, including this Delphi case. And some of these older articles are actually really heartbreaking to read, because just the dates. This was posted Monday, January 15th, 2018. Megyn Kelly welcomed the families of Liberty German and Abigail Williams on today. In less than 1 month, we will be facing the 1-year anniversary of the slaying of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. Liberty's grandparents, Mike and Becky Patty, along with their sister, Kelsey German, joined the mother of Abigail, Anna Williams, in answering a few new questions posed from Megyn Kelly. When Megyn asked Becky what happened that day, she explained there were several kids there in and out of the trails throughout the day. There was a lull in activity which left the girls alone, giving the killer a chance to take them. Megyn asked, was this a place to go hang out? Mike explains it is a trail system. That's what it is for. So, of course, that's what the girls were doing. That's what they asked to do that day. It was unusually warm, 68 degrees that day. Mike says in his opinion, Bridge Guy was overdressed for that day. Did he use a motorcycle? Did he ride a motorcycle? Did he wear extra clothes to help cover things up? And just a quick aside there, not everybody monitors the weather. So if it was someone who didn't know it would be unusually warm that day, they would, of course, be dressed as if it were a normally cool, cold day for the season. Of course, if they did know, then who knows. When Megyn Kelly said the girls were murdered within 4 hours of being at that park, the camera slowly panned away from the family members who showed no response, and no verbal response or confirmation from the family could be heard. Again, this is how this was shot, of course. When Superintendent Doug Carter was asked, when you hear that tape, can you hear the crime? He said, quote, "We believe she captured the image of the killer. We believe she captured the voice of the murderer," end quote. This is more than previously confirmed during a conference when Captain Burston said that, quote, "This may or may not be the killer," end quote. So again, just tracing law enforcement commentary on the case, what they didn't release, how long it took. I mean, this is a critical time period. Some people believe that once Bridge Guy knew he was recorded, he drastically changed his appearance, maybe moved out of the area. Whereas that might not, there might have been a little bit more chance to catch him if everything was released right off the bat. And a lot of times it is in missing persons cases. So now, in other cases where there is law enforcement complicity to a certain degree and or incompetence, again, I'm not pretending to know which it is, that this is how they would handle it. They would cause some muddying of the waters. They would not release certain things. And then, of course, other people believe they have the guy, so they didn't need to release it. And they possibly, maybe they were just after the accomplice and they didn't want to spook either one of them. That seems theoretically plausible. Again, without knowing what they do or don't have, it's really impossible to say. So back to this article, finally someone is giving some confirmation. Megyn Kelly reminds viewers of the $240,000 reward, hoping someone will step forward with more information. I think that's a pretty unusually high reward, which is also curious why, it's tough. Family members, friends, particularly those with money issues, a lot of times in these criminal circles, people have money issues. They might want that sum of money. I think furthermore, just on another aside here, I think particularly when you're dealing with crimes against children and things of these nature, I think it should also be advertised. Not only is this reward a monetary reward, but they would, let's say, expunge someone's criminal record if it were either very low nonviolent charges, like maybe just assault and battery of another adult, not a child, of course, or I don't know, drug charges, of course, any kind of, especially drug charges. A lot of these circles, there's people with drug issues, drug charges, maybe some petty theft. It should be advertised that those would all be dropped in addition to a monetary reward. And obviously, if they were, let's say, an unknowing accomplice, let's say they didn't know the guy was going to kill anybody, but maybe he mentioned something, maybe they helped him without knowing what he had done. Obviously, immunity could be offered in that situation. I don't think the family members would object to that if someone didn't knowingly help. Or maybe they thought he killed some druggie or something. They didn't know that they would have never helped him if they known he'd killed a minor or an innocent person, if they thought maybe he killed somebody, again, another adult, a criminal, drug element, maybe. Who knows? Again, these are all unknown variables. But I think offering immunity and the dropping of, let's say, drug charges to solve some of these cold case murders, I think that's perfectly reasonable, and it should be advertised, and perhaps there'd be more of a public response. When asked if there had been any similar crimes in the area, Doug Carter responded, quote, we believe that anyone who would commit a crime like this with such incredibly evil intent likely has committed the crime before, and with that known, he likely will commit it again, end quote. So now law enforcement finally says they believe this is a serial killer who will likely commit these types of crimes again. Doug Carter addresses America when he says, quote, please disregard the face. Look at the body because anyone can identify a family member by looking at the body, end quote.
Have there been any other similar crimes, Doug, similar MOs in the area?
Well, we believe that a person that would commit a crime like this with such incredibly evil intent likely has committed that crime before. And with that known, he likely will commit it again. And the image that we have to America is, please disregard the face, but look at the body, because anybody could identify a family member by looking at the body. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm asking. Please disregard the face, disregard the face, disregard the face.
That's kind of interesting to say. So is the sketch, are they, again, there's plenty of issues with the sketch, of course, young guy, older guy, same guy, whatever, different guy that wasn't even the guy, possibly someone else walking the trails. I mean, there's so many issues with the sketches, but now there's a call to actually disregard the face completely. That's quite interesting. Again, it's just all these details and the timeline of the details. It's all very bizarre. When Megyn Kelly asked Doug Carter for an age range on Bridge Guy, he says, "We cannot estimate an age. We'll just say a grown man." Also quite interesting.
Can you tell the age of this man?
We can't.
You don't know, and not even a range?
I think a range would be speculative at this point in time. Obviously a grown man.
My question would be for the sketch artist, if there is no age estimate on Bridge Guy, how can the sketch be anywhere near accurate? Is that why we are now to disregard the sketch? Then she asked Doug Carter, were there any eyewitnesses who actually saw him? His response, quote, "No, there were not." End quote.
Mm-hmm. Were there any eyewitnesses who actually saw him?
No, there were not.
Other than, obviously, the girls.
Right.
So it seems like the belief here is that this guy, whoever was spotted, was not actually the Bridge Guy murderer, or for whatever reason they're doing some wordplay here. I don't know I don't know how to make heads or tails of these statements here. So whatever happened to the witness mentioned in a recent interview, the one said to have spoken with Bridge Guy briefly, having seen him leaving from the cemetery side of the trail. If no witness ever saw him, who gave the description of the sketch? Anna addresses others who ask how could this have happened, pointing out that the girls had all taken precautions following the buddy system, carrying their phones, etc. Anna also pointed out again that they believe the two girls had fought for their lives and for each other. So that's interesting. So it's unknown what law enforcement has not officially released anything regarding specific details of scratches, bruises, things of that nature, or whatever DNA might be under the fingernails. Again, for whatever reason, law enforcement has not been releasing this information. I'll ask my readers again, what type of job or hobby would a man have that would excuse scratches on his hands, arms, upper body, etc.? Suddenly, during the show, Megyn Kelly makes an announcement that their affiliate station, WTHR, reports the FBI is extending their search into southeastern Tennessee. I'll just be clear, I saw a touch of shock on Doug Carter's face when she addressed him for opinions on such an unexpected, off-the-cuff announcement. And you could see his reaction. I don't know what to make of it. Doug Carter immediately started clearing up this hornet's nest, responding with, quote, "This investigation is national. I'm tracking what's happening down in Tennessee, but I don't want to be singularly focused in one area at this time," end quote.
Our affiliate, our NBC affiliate, WTHR, is now reporting that the search has been extended by the FBI for the killer into southeastern Tennessee, and that you can help. So that if that's your area, and if that figure, that man, looks at all familiar to you, the hotline information that we showed is also available now. You can find it right now on our website. You can see the phone number there. Can I get your thoughts on that, Doug, on the expansion of the search by the FBI into southeastern Tennessee?
This investigation is national. I'm tracking with what's happening down in Tennessee, and I don't want to be singularly focused on any one place right now.
Mm-hmm.
This investigation is national. This investigation is national. This investigation is national. And I don't want to be singularly focused on any one. And I don't want to be singularly focused on any one place right now.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what's happening down in Tennessee? Have I missed something? The Bledsoe County Sheriff's Department has since clarified the suspect has not been seen in the area, and this is a nationwide search, deleting the original post that had drawn so much attention. Carter also explained later nothing was happening in Tennessee. So, is this, again, are we dealing with Freudian slips? Are we dealing with some kind of cover-up? Are we dealing with just false information that should be disregarded after the fact? How would we know? And again, this is all, I mean, it's really tough, again, to make heads or tails of anything. If something really did happen in Tennessee, and then they wanted to put the lid on it because they didn't want to reveal it, but they didn't know exactly what was happening, so they made the decision to put the lid on it later after allowing some kind of slip out about it firsthand. We really don't know. So let's move on to something from the rumor mill, and an early rumor, and then we'll move on to the dark hours. This, again, from this blog, evilunsolved.blogspot.com, Friday, December 8th, 2017. They were killed in a barn. Today, I really think this rumor needs to be addressed. I chose this rumor to study first because I'd really like for my readers to join me in this research. We all know that Ron Logan's property was searched, including the barns on his property. I personally don't know whether any other barns in the area have been searched. There was a home on Bicycle Road searched as well, no arrests. So for the moment, we'll assume the rumor is still true, they were killed in a barn. Law enforcement must have come upon the scene of two brutally attacked girls with a clean perimeter, a clean scene. This would bring them to conclude Libby and Abby were abducted and later dumped to be found. And again, just on a quick aside, they're supposedly, again, we're going to have to track all this information. The recording is 6 minutes long, as initially reported, and I don't know where this rumor came from, either someone who heard the tape or claimed to have heard it, that Abby and Libby screamed right after he told them to go down the hill. So they were already screaming. We know other people were in the area. So again, I'm not dismissing the possibility that they were killed shortly after, but they would have been screaming. It would have been heard. Is it more plausible that possibly he led them to a car near that driveway where he was parked, or he marched them elsewhere and under some kind of, again, if he had a gun, told them not to scream? Is it possible that they were not killed right there within the vicinity of where they were found? Is that a possibility? I mean, just looking at all of these variables, it seems it is a possibility, possibly a very high possibility. Back to this article here. If that were the case, how far do you believe a killer who just abducted two teenage girls would drive in order to have privacy enough to carry out a gruesome, brutal beating and rape of both? If the plan, or if that was the original plan and then that didn't happen for whatever reason, if the plan were to return the bodies to be found, I personally don't think they'd drive an extreme distance. We also have to look at this. If they were abducted, taken to a barn, beaten, raped, killed, and returned to be found, there was a reason for them to be found. There was a message lying in the leaves with those two girls that day. We just have to decode it. So let's look at a few barns in the area. Not many. I won't include the 2 areas where we now know search warrants were served. When I think about this killer, I picture a local guy that rides a 4-wheeler through the area, hunts the area, and knows every deer trail like the back of his hand. With that said, he would also know where every barn is. And I'm just going to jump in with another aside here. Or there's an accomplice involved who knows all these areas and spots, and the accomplice might have not even known that anybody was to be killed. Again, we have to keep all these possibilities on the table. These structures are good hunting sheds, good protection from the weather when you're hiking or 4-wheeling and a storm comes through. Any of these barns, cabins, structures would be less than a 15-minute drive from the end of the bridge to the structure and less than 10 minutes to deliver the bodies from the structure to the cemetery. So looking here at the first structure, the blue border, and it's a little bit of a distance. It's a little bit of a distance, but again, the case is unsolved, so we have to really think outside the box here and examine these alternate possibilities. If you notice, there's a small dirt road leading from the back of the property to the barn, the spot where the dot marks 4500-5138-450 west. There is actually a dirt road off to drive up into the woods in front of the barn. However, the line you see is leading to it, not the route in and out. There are 3 structures in this same area with dirt roads that lead through the woods to each one. I believe if any barn was used during the dark hours, the route to return the bodies would have been to the cemetery and down the deer trail to avoid any activity at the entry of the Monon High Bridge Trail. If they were already dead, wrapped, and dragged there, disposing of clothing in the creek before leaving, it would not have taken long to dump the bodies and move on or blend in. And that's an interesting point because of the search parties. So the search party had people, of course, on ATVs as well, many coming and going, volunteers. If the murderer was among them, moving in or out, I mean, again, it's so tough. It's so tough. A barn would also provide complete privacy for whatever length of time it would take for him/them to complete the job. If the girls were abducted and taken to a barn, this would solidify the theory of the killer being familiar with the area and most likely familiar with one or both of the girls. If the attack itself happened there by the creek, if they were murdered 50 feet from the creek bank, why didn't anyone hear or see anything? These are photos taken by someone who visited the crime scene. We can clearly see through the woods with the bridge itself being visible from the scene. We're only talking about a distance of 500 to 700 feet between the bridge and the crime scene. The trees were bare, as we can clearly see. I realize it is possible the murders happened at this crime scene. It would have taken some effort to keep 2 teenage girls quiet and to keep their beatings quiet. Were they killed or they were found? Imagine it. Just picture it for a moment. Picture the scuffle, the initial resistance. Picture Libby fighting like hell because the authorities said she did. Her grandfather said she did. Picture them being beaten. Picture them being raped. Yes, rape is currently a rumor. Was it possible to carry out this crime here at this scene and go unnoticed? Let's throw a couple more rumors in here before we really try to picture these things. Their throats were slit. Libby was almost decapitated. Part of Libby's fingers were cut off. Other points I am considering. 1, if they were taken to a barn, this crime was well planned out prior to the attack. The killer knew one or both victims. This could have been a sexual predator after one girl, or it could have been someone wanting revenge. If the latter, this guy is a hunter on Deer Creek. 2, if the attack, the entire event from start to finish, happened in the woods where the bodies were found, the possibility of it being a stranger crime increases, but is not 100%. 3, if one girl received the largest portion of the assault, a more brutal beating, a more gruesome condition left behind, she was a target. I'm not 100%, I wouldn't say that necessarily, because if she just pissed the guy off more, who knows? 4, if one girl's face were left covered with clothing, a rumor, and the others were not, this shows remorse for one and completion of a job with the other. And this is all very, very interesting. I understand why certain details of the crime scene would be kept from the public because, again, false confessions and things of that nature, the police would want to be sure. So they would have to keep certain things unreleased. But to keep everything unreleased, I mean, is that one of the reasons the case is not solved as of yet? 5, a time discrepancy in reference to the audio authorities have is in play as well. One rumor states there is 6 minutes of audio, another states there is 40 minutes of audio. We have no way of proving one over the other, as I have found yet, so here I'd ask you to just go with your own instinct on this crime. Also, my thoughts on that are, of course, so were the photos just posted to Snapchat? And supposedly the video was actually recorded with the actual camera, the internal camera on the phone, on the iPhone, not through Snapchat. And I'll be going over this probably in the next episode on the exact timing and the recordings and everything. But if this was basically being faked as a selfie because the girls were spooked, so if they wanted to make it look like they were taking selfies but angled it so that bridge guy could still be seen in the selfie, and that's why the quality is so poor because that's quite zoomed in. And if after that point she slipped her phone in her pocket, and then if they were taken elsewhere, was it a 40-minute recording with about 6 minutes of talking or screaming or something of that nature, and then we don't know how that was spread out. So if they were taken elsewhere, again, it's something we don't know. The end of the article here. Each day I try to focus on one part of the case, not the case as a whole. It is difficult to do, and I'm hoping that through the things I write, along with your input, your corrections, which I appreciate more than you know, and all of our dedication, we will produce at some point a solid suspect. So let's go through the post, of course, that started this all, the November 14th, 2017 post, The Dark Hours. Today, the focus is on the time of the audio-video recording made by Libby and a gap in the timeline that has not yet been accounted for. Libby took a Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge at 2:07 p.m. on Monday, February 13th, 2017. Shortly thereafter, Libby took a photo of a man crossing the bridge, apparently following them. Libby had also started the audio-video on her phone. The audio is 6 minutes long and it isn't clear as to how much of the actual crime was recorded. Authorities are withholding that information, only releasing a voice portion of Down the Hill, hoping the public will recognize the voice and sketch. And just real quick, later on they did release a slightly longer portion that said Guys Down the Hill. Some people believe that is not from the same, that was not chronological. So the audio, those were just the clearest parts of the audio, and they just put them together. So he could have said Guys at a different portion. Nobody knows anything, really, because law enforcement has not really released that much information. What time did Libby start the audio video on her cell phone? Was it a full 6-minute audio without interruptions, or did Libby record in increments of fearful moments? I doubt the latter of the two. Authorities stated they believed Libby recorded a crime, quote, about to occur, end quote. And this was at the February 22nd, 2017 press conference, the Delphi Police press conference, RTV6. This statement tells me the recording was not of the murders of Libby and Abby. It tells me this is the capture and detain portion of the crime. Some argued that because the statement, "this is the stuff of nightmares," was made by an official, it means the entire crime was recorded. I disagree, because for anyone who is being taken under control by another person against their will, it would be the stuff of nightmares. I cannot conclude that a crime of this dimension was committed in a 6-minute period of time. And of course, there's other rumors that it was a 40-minute recording and all of that. Okay, rumor, someone who claims to have heard the audio said the girls screamed immediately after being ordered to go down the hill. It has been implied that this audio was started around the time they reached the end of the bridge after Libby took the photo of Abby. If this is accurate, the audio would have started most likely by 2:15. The search had begun with family members at around 3:30 that afternoon. Authorities joined the family at 5:30. The police stated they did not think the girls were in any danger. They believed Abby and Libby were just lost. At 2:30 a.m., the search was stopped due to darkness and cold weather conditions, with the temperature being reported at a high of 43 degrees and a low of 27 degrees on the night of February 13th, 2017. Some speculated the authorities dropped the ball hard on this case by going under the assumption the girls were simply lost in the woods. Some say authorities abandoned these families during a time of desperate need for assistance. At the time authorities left the scene, shutting down the formal search for the night, family members remained, continuing their own search without professional assistance until after 4 a.m. that morning. Family members stated on public media they had walked, ridden four-wheelers, etc. in their efforts to find the missing girls. The dark hours. When the family left the scene, did anyone remain at the entry of the trail and or at the cemetery until the searchers were to meet up again at 9 a.m. on the morning of February 14th, 2017. And why 9 a.m.? I mean, what is this, business? Why not sunup? It's really, they dropped the ball pretty badly. We don't have a definite answer to this question, forcing us to go on the assumption that there was no security around the area between the hours of 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. Allowing room for error in the family's estimated time of departure, we could safely estimate a gap of 4 to 5 hours during which time the trail was unsupervised and unoccupied. And again, if there are people that want to chime in, I don't know what was reported early on. They searched throughout the night, certain family members. So does that mean that there was someone there the entire night without any break? And if there was no break, were they at that specific spot, or were they searching elsewhere where they wouldn't have noticed someone in that specific spot where the bodies were found? It is important to note for future reference that sunrise was at 7:41 a.m. February 14th, 2017. Concluding the total hours of dark, empty trail would be 2.5 to 3.5 hours. Most likely 2.5 to 3 dark hours when accounting for the lack of an accurate time the family departed from the area to sunrise, approximately 4:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. I am hoping, as are many, at some point we will receive clarity in the timeline, the facts versus rumors, and just an overall more informative press release. One that would possibly give the average citizen a little more to go on in answering the authorities' cries for public assistance in identifying the suspect. And that is, it's when we mix in police not wanting to look bad, ego issues, all of these things, they might not want to release certain information that makes them look bad. And if this was carried out differently, would the case have already been solved? So this was a later post, March 14th, 2018, Pictures for Thought. Choosing a direction and thinking about time. Would Bridge Guy force the girls across the creek and straight to the crime scene, allowing a 40-minute window of time? Or would Bridge Guy direct the girls to take a right, following the creek to the barn for the duration of the dark hours? Approximately 2,000 feet from the end of the bridge to the barn would be an approximate 10 to 15-minute walk at most. The barn is located just over 800 feet from the nearest house, separated by a thick forest of evergreens. Could the homeowner hear any noises or screams coming from the barn? Would he keep them overnight, convincing them he will release them, but insists on walking them to a release point? Could he have led them 1,600 feet away from the barn to kill them? Was Abby alive, as some rumors state, when searchers found them that morning? Or would he keep them overnight, kill them at the barn, and move the bodies by way of assistance, such as a deer sled or a kayak? Something as simple as this 300-pound capacity deer sled would do the job. Just under 700 feet from the end of the bridge to the crime scene if taking a path towards it. The crime scene is 900 feet from the nearest house. Not much of a difference between this distance of the crime scene to the nearest house and the barn to the nearest house. Of course, whether someone was home or not to hear any kind of commotion or screams would also play a factor. Choosing a less direct path toward the crime scene, staying within the wood line to reach the creek, the distance is just over 900 feet. Isn't any scenario possible? Was this barn searched? And you would have to, if you were making an assumption, you'd have to assume that they searched all these barns in the area. Of course, there are further barns and further structures. Is it known whether each and every one of them was searched? How thoroughly they were searched? By whom were they searched? Again, if there is some kind of rogue law enforcement element here, would they suppress certain information? Is that why the case is unsolved? We don't know. There's just so many variables here that are unknown, and law enforcement has been so tight-lipped about everything. At this point, one has to really wonder how much being this tight-lipped has compromised the case, the investigation. Would they have caught the perpetrator or perpetrators if the video was released immediately? So, yeah, there's so much more to go over, so many unknowns. I think it's just stunning how a case with so much information, because this really, even though the area is semi-remote, it's not that remote. It's not like nobody was there that day. It's not like it was a super freezing day. There was absolutely nobody walking the trails, and these two girls decided they were just that bored. They went out there this day. That would be a different scenario. That would almost make more sense. But that's not what happened. There were many people coming and going. Some estimates around 80 people within a certain amount of hours of this crime within the general vicinity, not necessarily on the bridge, but just in the general area of the park. It's really, really bizarre. Really bizarre. And then the search, the assumption that they got lost. So let's say they got lost. It's getting cold. They're going to leave them to die? That doesn't make any sense. Even if they didn't suspect foul play, the girls could have been hurt, whatever the case may be. Why would you suspend a search? Do they not have search lights? This isn't like the year 1900. This is post-2000. There's equipment. Bring an extra jacket. Use search. It's really, really strange how this played out and how the authorities have handled this in general. So it's really time to start thinking outside of the box. And when I first looked at the details of the case, it really did seem strange how the bodies just weren't noticed. Because the search began during daylight hours in the afternoon. They went to the bridge, they looked around, the trees are bare. Colorful clothing could be seen through the tree line. It's not like they were found miles and miles away. It's really, really strange. That's all if there were more details on exactly which areas were searched, but this is not that far from the bridge. That doesn't mean someone walked the exact spot where the bodies were found, but is it possible the search didn't even go in that general vicinity? It seems unlikely. They would have searched every which way. So, yeah, it's really bizarre. We do have to consider the theoretical possibility that they were marched elsewhere, possibly taken elsewhere, even by vehicle. And it is curious why they would have been brought back to that particular spot instead of left where they were. Because it is risky. It's definitely risky to bring them back there. So unless they were trying to frame Logan, and I know that there are theories where this is being discussed, where people with grudges, drug issues, there would definitely have to be a reason to bring them not only back to the general area, but that specific spot. Or perhaps they weren't being brought to that specific spot, but if it was somebody with an ATV and a sled, and they were scared that searchers were returning and maybe they were taking them somewhere else. And then that was the spot they chose quickly because they thought someone else was coming. There's just so many variables to go over, but this case definitely needs to be solved. There's just way too much information for this case to not be solved. And I know there are certain people out there who really believe law enforcement already have the guy, and for whatever reason, they're not moving on it. Which that might be true. It might be true. Maybe the guy is part of some bigger operation and there's other fish to fry. I don't know. But if not, then it's definitely very, very tragic that this was handled this way if there's not a resolution soon. It's just, it's unacceptable. I mean, that's really what it is. I hope you guys found another edition of Mindshock True Crime in the Delphi Case series informative and thought-provoking. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Everything helps us get more podcast episodes out, not just in this case, but in other cases. And keeping the awareness up is what gets cases solved. So make sure you like this podcast. Make sure you share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You can also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If that's all still not working, you could just go to youtube.com/Mindshock and manually check the latest episodes and peruse our ever-growing back catalog. Thoughts, theories, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. You are listening to the Delphi Case series, Episode 5, Bridge Guy Arrested. That's right, you heard it correctly. Bridge Guy was positively identified and arrested. And if that's not mind-shocking enough for you, we'll be going over even more mind-shocking information. I am, of course, your host, Bruce McGuire. If you want to support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure your device allows those notifications to come through. If it's still not working, you could just go to youtube.com/Mindshock for all the latest updates in our podcast releases, and you could also check out our ever-growing back catalog. Make sure to keep awareness up in this case and in other cases where justice has not been served. And keeping awareness up is, in many cases, the defining factor in what gets cases resolved. So hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, if I didn't get your attention enough, it has not been publicly stated definitively that Bridge Guy was not only ID'd definitively, but apprehended. And this is just so mind-shocking. This is quickly becoming the most confusing case out there. If you haven't checked out our previous episode, The Dark Hours, make sure you check that out. We go over a lot of details, including Doug Carter specifically stating to disregard the face. Why would he say that? And that was very mind-shocking. So we're going to be looking back and figuring out how this was all determined, how it all went down. So, from all available information, the new sketch of the younger suspect was released April 22nd, 2019. The previously released sketch is more or less clearly a different person. So this is a news bulletin that was released April 24th, 2019. Multi-agency task force clarifies points about the Delphi murder suspect sketches. Delphi, Indiana. In the early days and months of the Delphi murder investigation, information was developed about suspect descriptions. It was initially believed the sketch that had been in public view over the last 2 years of a person in the age range of his 50s to 50s was a person of interest in this murder investigation. Now, as the investigation has matured and past information has been reassessed, it is the belief of investigators with the multi-agency task force that the person depicted in the sketch released on April 22nd more accurately represents the person wanted for the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. I'll go over that real quick one more time. It is the belief of investigators with the multi-agency task force that the person depicted in the sketch released on April 22nd, this is the newer, younger guy, more accurately represents the person wanted for the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. It is important to distinguish these points about the two sketches. They are not the same person. The person depicted in the originally released sketch is not presently a person of interest in this investigation. So let me say that again. The person depicted in the originally released sketch is not presently a person of interest in this investigation. Now, the way that's phrased, does it not clearly imply that this individual was identified and ruled out? And I will be circling back to that in a moment, but let's continue here. The sketch released on April 22nd is representative of the face of the person captured in the video on Liberty German's cell phone as he was walking on the high bridge. So that's kind of weird. So basically that first sketch is from the witnesses seeing the guy walking the trails, not the guy on the bridge, according to this. The person in the sketch released April 22nd is described as having a youthful appearance but could fall in the age range from his 20s to late 30s. This person's appearance could look different today if he has grown a mustache, beard, or let his hair grow longer or cut his hair shorter than depicted in the sketch. Members of the Delphi community should reflect back on people they know in the community that look similar to the sketch released on April 22nd, especially if that person has changed their appearance since the murders occurred in February of 2017. So now, of course, it's important to distinguish that this new sketch actually was created before the originally released sketch of the older guy. So this is IndyStar.com. This article was published April 22nd, 2019 by Vic Reichart and Justin L. Mack. Delphi Murders new sketch of killer and video from Libby's phone released. So it states, Master Trooper Taylor Bryant, a sketch artist with the Indiana State Police who drew the new sketch, told IndyStar a sketch is based on how a particular witness describes the suspect. If there are several witnesses, Bryant would draw a sketch for each description. Bryant did not draw the sketch that police released in July 2017. The witness is the main focus, so there's no input from law enforcement at all in the generating of a sketch other than my presence as the artist. Bryant uses a facial identification reference sheet that has a list of different categories from head shapes to different eyebrows and noses. The person will describe the suspect based on those categories. It's easier to do that than to describe the suspect using just words, Bryant said. The sketches are not exact, Bryant said. The renderings are ballpark estimation of what the person looks like. The sketch released on Monday was drawn by Bryant on February 17th. 2017, a few days after the victims' bodies were found. The picture was based on the description of a person who saw something that the person felt needed to be reported, according to Bryant. So it's unclear on how exactly they determined that this was the murderer specifically. So what details have not been made public about that witness statement? And then, of course, as we went over in the previous episode, it is likely, if not possible to some degree, that the location of the bodies was staged And that's something I'm going to go over in the next episode when we examine law enforcement oddities and issues with the investigation. But we're going to lead into a little bit of that here with this bridge guy that was identified and arrested. Okay. So Kelsey German, Liberty's sister, stated this when someone asked her about why there was a drastic change regarding the sketch on Twitter. Kelsey German, April 22nd, 2019, responded, "A recent development is what I understand. They created several sketches at the time they believed the other one was more credible." Someone else chimed in, "This upsets me that we were shown the first one for 1.5 years and this one was hidden away. This is shoddy work." Kelsey said there was a reason for it. Thankful we have it now. So there was a reason they didn't release this particular sketch. What that reason is, we don't know. But Kelsey is stating that there was a reason. Now, whether she knows the reason or not, or she's just saying there was a reason because she was assured that there was a good reason, that is unknown. So now let's move to definitive information here about this bridge guy suspect being arrested and identified early on. So there's a podcast, Best Case, Worst Case. So Jim Clemente, so this is a former state prosecutor, former FBI criminal profiler. He's involved in many different cases. He does different podcasts, considered a pretty credible expert. And of course, he has sources in the FBI, having worked for the FBI. So this is what was said, episode 122 of Best Case, Worst Case. Just beyond 33 minutes, Jim Clemente says this, quote, "And I think what must have happened is they have taken these leads, they have interviewed literally thousands of people, and they have found someone who looks at that video that they released and says, yes, I definitely saw that guy minutes before the girls came by, and I saw his face, and that's where the sketch came from." And so the other sketch was somebody saw in the area and was suspicious about. Turns out it's a guy who's sexually interested in children who's had multiple arrests for it, right? At 36 minutes, 42nd, Francie Hakes states this. And Francie Hakes on the podcast here, she is a child protection and national security consultant. She was formerly a federal prosecutor and first national coordinator for the child exploitation prevention and interdiction. So these are people with sources within the FBI. The police obviously know who they're looking for and spent a significant amount of time looking for the man in this sketch. And as you said, Jim, that man, it turned out, recently was arrested and was a sex offender. But what we found out recently was he is apparently not the killer. So it's very interesting that she used the word apparently. Because what was said by her sources in the FBI and Clemente, what did they say exactly? Because she didn't say he was not the killer. He is apparently not the killer. So was the information not definitive here? So obviously this caused some uproar by people closely following the case who happened to listen to this particular podcast at the time. I did not. And so these are people's comments on Reddit. I was confused about this as well, decided to message the podcast through Facebook. I confirmed with them that I didn't misunderstand what they were saying about the original sketch, an arrest being made that cleared that man. They confirmed that they did say that, and that, quote, "That is what we have heard from our sources," end quote. So we have Clemente and Hakes, these individuals who, by all accounts, are not dialed into, are not part of Delphi law enforcement. They have no reason to cover up for local law enforcement. So this information is supposedly coming from official channels. So here's what's interesting, and someone chimed in here on Reddit as well. What are the chances that a sex offender creep unrelated to the case was seen in and around the trails that day? So someone else responded, they went on the podcast to explain that there are places and times that attract that kind of person. The example they gave is college campuses at the beginning of the semester. Basically comparing the bridge trail to that because it was a known place young people hung out around. So they called it a target-rich environment. So, see, here's the thing, though. I don't know. This is an interesting coincidence. So a guy that is the sketch, he was seen there. So some kind of sex offender on the prowl was there but didn't commit the crime. So not that that's unbelievable. That's possible. But what kind of major hangout spot is this? Because from other people that have chimed in on forums and on social media, not everyone in Delphi even knows about the Monon High Bridge. It's like any kind of town. There's some semi-popular hangout that people who know about it, they like going there, but there's plenty of people who don't know about it. So again, this is coming from people who actually live in Delphi and that area. They have stated that not everybody knows about the bridge. So it's not the most popular landmark that every single person knows about. So I don't know what the exact percentage is. Can we estimate half the people know about it? Less than half? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if there was an official survey done. But apparently not everybody knows about it. So would it preclude, so depending on how many offenders or child predators are in the area, I mean, this almost reminds me of the Amy Mihalovic case, which if you haven't checked that out, check out the Mindshock podcast on Amy's case. It is also so many rabbit holes. I'll be releasing the next episode in that series soon as well. It's just so mind-shocking, but that case is actually a perfect example where they actually tracked down several separate individuals who were all stalking, I'm sure that's the right word. They had their eye on Amy, specifically. Now, if they also had their eye on other children, that is unknown, possibly. But there was no shortage in that area. But here, we're talking about a trail system in Delphi, 2017. Again, Delphi is not the most populated city. It is not just this huge tourist destination. If it were, that would be a lot more believable. And not that this isn't believable, but here's where my thoughts are going to go to, is that there were some accomplices involved. And again, even in the Amy case, those are my thoughts as well. And some of these unsolved cases where people are so-called ruled out or definitively ruled out due to alibis or things of other nature, that doesn't mean they don't know the perpetrators. If these are shady individuals with shady friends, they might hear things. They might hear rumors. They might be involved actively. They might not actively be involved. But to just completely clear them and dismiss them, I don't know. So supposedly there is a lot of DNA at the scene where the bodies were found, staged or not. So did they clear him by saying, okay, well, his DNA was not on the bodies or underneath their fingernails or whatnot? Even if it weren't, is it possible he was some kind of a lookout or accomplice? Maybe he wasn't directly involved, but it's interesting that they have not announced this to the public. Do they know that he has an accomplice and that if they did announce it to the public, they would want to kill him or something to shut him up? I don't know. But we do have to look at these statistical anomalies, and are they really anomalies? Were there other offenders walking the trails that day? I mean, I don't know what the estimate were. There could have been upwards of 80 people total that day in the trail system. Out of the 80 people, is it out of the realm of possibility that there were several offenders that had nothing to do with the murders? Possibly. But so they were saying this is not the guy in the video coming up to them. This was simply some other guy that was walking the trails. But why does law enforcement not clearly clarify all of these things? So there's a little bit more information here. Apparently, Abby's mom posted on Facebook shortly after the new sketch was released that they released the second sketch because they cleared the first person. But that's all we really have here. How exactly he was cleared is unknown. So Abby's mom also said this on a podcast as well, that the individual in the first released sketch the older bridge guy, old bridge guy we can call him, he was arrested and supposedly cleared. So I'm just going to read a couple more responses here on social media. So a sex offender who just happened to be in the area where 2 girls were abducted and killed in a remote wooded area didn't do it. A response here, correct. DNA and fingerprints are on file with the CODIS and IAFIS being a sex offender and rapist. So if these samples did not match the DNA left at the scene, apparently they cleared him. Supposedly they do not match any other convicted felon in the system. So the perp that murdered the girls is not in the DNA database at the moment, hence no arrest almost 4 years after the double slaying. Someone else responded here, yes, unless the person had a slam dunk, ironclad alibi, I'd not believe it. I have no idea what law enforcement know, but I would certainly hope that something like a family member providing an alibi or the absence of DNA at the scene isn't enough to conclusively rule out someone as a suspect. It may not be enough to arrest and prosecute them, but it definitely doesn't clear them. I'm very curious how and why law enforcement abandoned the first sketch and cleared the sex offender and shifted their search towards the younger guy. Another response here, I spent way more time than I'm proud to admit scouring details about him, and there isn't much. All I found were 3 photos that didn't show up anywhere. They make you think but aren't very interesting. One at a wedding, one just chilling, and one standing by an old car. All very different times and all very blurry, mainly because they were cached previews of a site that no longer hosts the real images. Anyway, the full PE story is that cops did investigate. The full story is that cops did investigate a Delphi connection, possibly, but don't appear to be investigating it further. This guy lived an odd life, worked all day entirely alone on his elderly parents' farm, meaning nobody could provide an alibi or say he was missing or acting weird that day. I'm not 100% convinced it wasn't him, but I'm fairly convinced that everything we know now is everything we'll know about him. The other thing, of course, someone else astutely chimed in, we don't know if the DNA is usable or even from Bridge Guy. That doesn't mean anything. And that's a curious point as well. Again, if this was a lookout or something, we really don't know. Now, regarding the witnesses, we have a few problems because, as Doug Carter said on the Megyn Kelly show, which I went over in the previous episode, he said there were no witnesses, which is interesting. So nobody saw the guy. So I don't know why he said that. It's strange, but in other sources, law enforcement had said that there were witnesses. We just went over a few. And the 16-year-old witness apparently described the first sketch, the older Bridge guy, who is supposedly cleared. So if she did see him, her timeline where she saw him at 1:30 p.m. or so, that could be disregarded if it's not the guy. Now, if it's an accomplice, then there's some issues, of course. But if there were 2 people working this, committing this crime, and I mean, would they not be more likely to control 2 teenagers, particularly if there was another guy walking around, maybe with a rifle or whatnot, and they were clearly together? Would that get the girls to comply? I don't know. As I stated in the previous episode, supposedly there were rumors that the girls screamed as soon as he told them to go down the hill. In which case, the time frame is quite curious. And of course, regarding the witness for the sketch, this might be a witness that is not known to the public, again, either for safety purposes or for whatever other reasons that law enforcement is not disclosing a lot of information. So here is an interesting theory on the timeline of the sketches. So if young Bridge Guy was not spotted on the trails on the day of the double murder, because there was a sighting of a young guy on 625 North near a driveway, which was the source of the young guy's sketch. So if someone claimed to have spoken with her, so if law enforcement spoke with the lady in the driveway, she gave them info for the sketch, but they disregarded it because they thought it was less likely to be related, and they went with the old Bridge Guy theory. Once Old Bridge Guy was arrested and cleared, now they had to go back to this lady, even though they had this information. They had this other sketch right off the bat. They thought for whatever reason it might not be relevant, and they were, for whatever reason, convinced that it was the Old Bridge Guy. Then they realized they made a mistake and they're going with the young guy sketch. Is that how this all went down? And of course, law enforcement wouldn't admit that they were mistaken anyway, and that's another issue with a lot of these investigations, where you have egos on the line and all these issues. In the next episode, I'll be going over the law enforcement issues, of which there's no shortage, and there's far more damning and mind-shocking evidence that the bodies were not there during the search, and that they were placed there the following day in the early hours. So that's what we're going over next. But in this episode, again, this has not been publicly revealed that the older sketch, this guy was identified and arrested and supposedly cleared. Now, how long that took, a year and a half, I don't know. Maybe they had information earlier. Maybe they did think he was an accomplice. Maybe somehow they determined that he was not an accomplice. Maybe there's a whole bunch of police corruption that needs to be exposed, because if this Old Bridge Guy, if he's working with law enforcement in some kind of corruption or drug trafficking, racketeering of some kind, and he has info on them, he would give up the info on them to the FBI. So if they got ahead of the game, local PD apprehended this guy, they pretended to clear him so that nobody else would look at him. The question is, would the FBI not double check all of this? I don't know. It's quite bizarre. But if no one saw the actual killer, so again, something we haven't particularly discussed, what if the actual murderer never went on the trails and was never on that side of the bridge with the trails? If he had an accomplice, the accomplice might have been, or if there was no accomplice and there was just some other predator, offender of some kind, prowling the trails, that somehow it was determined that he was not related to this. I mean, if it's somebody that just walks those trails every single day, he has a record, he would probably walk that day also, right? Because if he walks every day, he would walk that day too. So perhaps it's not the greatest, perhaps it really is a coincidence. Every case is allowed one. But once you start stacking those coincidences into a giant pile, that's where problems start to arise. And we'll be going over a lot more of those in the next episode. But the police definitely did not do anybody any favors by saying in the early days that the sketch could be, that the perpetrator could look like a mix of both sketches, because that's just putting out really confusing information. Or are certain entities within law enforcement and FBI, are they not communicating with each other? And that's why we're getting all these different pieces of information released. It's just really bizarre. Here's a depressing comment on social media that I will close this podcast out with. The smaller towns get higher concentration of felons here in Indiana. When I originally made the comment, I was certain to make the disclaimer that I was not trying to smear entire communities, but yes, Indiana tends to be fairly quiet with its issues, but our smaller towns are problematic. There's a hospital and doctor's office everywhere. The doctors generally do not live in those communities. The exit of manufacturing coupled with the opioid crisis make the hardest hit communities in Midwest America. These towns can't keep good men because they will all leave for the bigger towns and city, leaving behind bad men. Some good sprinkled in, but mostly bad men in low-wage, low-skilled jobs, despite the wealth of job training programs. Unfortunately, there's a lot of lonely women who already are living in strained conditions with children and no one to sit. They oftentimes get with felons or any man they can find. Some common relationship combos are nurses and felons, school teachers and felons. Another, both parents aren't doing well, so grandparent is raising them. Again, I don't want to label an entire community, nor what was going on amongst the families. But I must speak on what the overwhelming makeup in these smaller Indiana villages is. Now, that's really interesting because that's something that's not really discussed that much in the mainstream. Unfortunately, there's a lot of problems. The opioid crisis is simply one of them. But yes, low-wage jobs, a lot of people living in poverty or borderline poverty. And there's just a lot of issues. A lot of issues where the other people that were walking the trails, I'm not sure every single person that even walked those trails was positively identified or spoke with police. You would think so, but if it was in particular some kind of felon afraid of police or with a long record, maybe he did see something. Maybe there's a witness that as of yet has not come forward that not necessarily saw the crime happening, but saw a strange individual walking, perhaps not on the main trail, but elsewhere. Who knows? So yeah, there's still so many variables to go over, and there's a lot of problems here. And again, from Doug Carter, disregard the face. Just very interesting. Very, very interesting. And he said that earlier on as well. So yeah, there's a lot of problems here, a lot more to go over. Hope you guys found this another mind-shocking and informative episode, and the ongoing conversation and awareness can continue to push this case to some kind of closure so that justice can be found. You can donate to our PayPal to help us get out more podcasts and cover even more cases, cold cases, and otherwise. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Like this podcast. Share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.